obviously with the housing development that's going on there on the waterfront, and then you've got the bridge, and then there's other stuff that's going on in Govan, as in like the universities moved in, so there's money coming into Govan that's potentially going to be getting spent for redevelopment and otherwise, you know. SWG3, there's talk potentially them opening up a base in Govan and doing a music thing, mate. Listen, these are all stuff. So they're SWG3, they're doing the murals and stuff like that. They're going to be doing murals in Govan, like the ones that are in Glasgow and stuff like that. So I think they're going to try and turn Govan into like a cultural centre as well, because you've got the shipyards, the Fairfield, you know, and then you've got the Govan Stones, which is all kind of middle class to it to be as well, but it's very working class as well. But there's more culture in Govan, I say, than there is sometimes.
There's a lot of history.
The rest of Glasgow.
A lot of history. Plus, I know you've got the Lyceum. They've always been talking about for fucking years. But they're going to turn that into is a dance in a cinema or something like that, man. But
well, the Asian dude that owns it, he wants to turn it into an Indian cinema.
An Indian cinema, so like a Bollywood cinema.
Bollywood thing, and then put the venue for Indian weddings. It's kind of kept quiet, that is, but.
Oh no, aye. Fuck, that's the only fucking idea you've not heard. Been suggestions, but everything else.
See what he does. But I think he wants to sell it for about $1 million from what I've heard. But he owns that. He owns that building and the block of shops all the way down the business centre. You'll see it on Govan Road. He owns all of that.
Oh, does he? Aye.
He owns it all. Aye. He bought it for like pennies on the pound, like 20 years ago, kind of thing.
Oh, really? Aye.
Aye. He bought that when it was nothing. So he's holding out or potentially trying to get money to do it up himself. You know. I kind of hear, I'm involved, and I hear all this kind of shit that goes on when you're involved in all that. But it is what it is, isn't it? You know what I mean? You know,
it's one of the ones you'll not find out until it's actually happening. You know what I mean? Because it's the same anywhere. You always see these great ideas, and then it opens up, and you're like, "Fuck, I didn't expect that."
It's but like you're saying, who knows? But yeah, I mean, potentially that I think they've got that idea to put Govan to what Finiston was like 20 years ago.
I think that's what they're going. I think it's what they're angling for. The new kind of Finiston in it, man. Finiston to the south side.
When I left Glasgow in 2000, Finiston was Finiston. You know, it wasn't what it was like.
Oh really? Aye.
Oh, I remember just as it was turning, and they built the restaurant down beside the Tesco, the wee Tesco. There was a restaurant they built there, and there was some like flats they built, but there was none of that. None of the pubs had changed. It was all drinking men pubs.
Oh, was it? Aye. That's a bit hoity-toity now, isn't it, man?
I remember when I come back to Glasgow, or even one of my trips up, somebody went, "Well, you're not going to the new West End?" Because I'm from Partick originally. And I drank Byers Road for years. And I went, "Where the fuck's the new West End?" And he went, "Finiston." And I went, "Finiston? How's that, the new West End?" He went, "Oh, mate, you need to go and see it." Sure enough. The next time I was up, I went down to Finiston. And now I live here, I've been up a few times, and you're like, what the fuck?
It's totally different, man.
Totally different.
In layman's terms, you could say it's full of wankers.
100%, mate. I mean, but that's what it is. That's the gentrification of what money does.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You know?
It's fucking.
It's crazy, but that's what money brings to it. You know what I mean?
That's it, man. But there's something about I don't know. See the West End and that. I fucking love the culture. See, just you going about. It's like you go about like schemes and that. It's all the kind of same calibre of person you meet. But when you go to the West End, it's pure colourful people. It's mad multicultural people. It's so different. You know what I mean?
I mean, we grew up in Partick and that, and then I drank Byers Road and the rest of it. And I always remember people used to say, this is years back in the 90s and the late 80s. They say, how do you? We used to drink the town, but not that often. So how do you not drink the tune? He says, because don't want my cunt kicked in.
I know, fucking rock, grabbed, jabbed and stabbed.
Aye, but it was like that back in the day.
Aye,
you know what I mean?
Fuck, wild, man.
And then whereas Byers Road, that was all that university culture. And I left school with nothing, but we fitted right in, me and my mates, you know what I mean? And that was just the way it was, you know. We kept out of trouble.
Aye. Best way to be in it, man, especially back in the times, man, know what I mean? Because it was fucking wild back then.
That's when the people were getting stabbed left, right and centre. I mean, I know it's coming back, not so much here though, but that's when it was bad, before they brought that Scottish Violence Reduction Unit in and stuff like that, the VRU and stuff. You know? I've only learnt about all that since I've come back to Glasgow, because I kind of get pals like with guys like James Docherty and stuff like that.
I'm not sure who it is, James Docherty.
Google him, he'll be a great guy for you.
Wait, I think I've heard his name. Tell me a bit about
James
somebody's recommended him before, I think.
James involved with the addiction recovery side of everything, right? But he's Scottish Violence Reduction Unit, so he's involved in that. He's an ex-offender, ex-user, came through his own journey, came through the other side, and now he's kind of like, he's that kind of lived experience person that's on that, that's kind of, so he's been there, done it with everything, but he's involved in that ACEs, you know, that childhood averse, whatever it is and all that. It's this big massive psychological thing. But he'd be a good guy.
Somebody did reckon it, because when you said name James Dockett, it kind of rang a bell, and he said that, it's just, it clicked again, a light bulb. I'd forgot about that. Somebody recommended him before.
He's a good guy. He'll be, he's one of the guys that, he's a proper, like, you know, scheme boy.
He's came for the harsh upbringing.
He's a guy that you would literally, you'll sit here for an hour and you walk away and go,
head blown.
And that's what I was like when I met him. But we got on, me and him are really good pals now, just because we can rant at each other about goes on and stuff. But he's a good guy, and his intelligence level is like,
He's dead switched on.
very switched on. He's like, what's the other rapper?
Loki.
Loki. So he's best mates with Loki as well.
Oh, is he? Aye.
So they're kind of, they two are really good. They two are really well connected. But the fact he's involved with the Scottish the violence reduction unit thing, it's kind of, it gives him that established, you know, people listening.
He's kind of like respected within, let's see, but a lot of circles that maybe they'd shy away from kind of people that comes from that background.
10 years ago, 20 years ago, they would never give this boy the time of day. Wouldn't they give him the time of day because he spoke the way he spoke, or he was an ex-addict, you know, he came through the addiction recovery, you know. But now people listen to guys like that because you need to.
Aye, definitely, you know what I mean? And it does well for a lot of people, see it's in similar circumstances, you know what I mean? 'Cause it's one thing, if you listen to somebody that's grew up in like fucking posh upbringings, private school and all that shit, try to, let's see, tell you about, like, you're not going to relate to it, but if you got somebody that's came for it, you know what I mean, and they've got the other side, you know what I mean, it's a lot more relatable.
Honestly, even like for my upbringing, you know, I mean, I grew up in Castlemilk till I was about 8 or 9, and then we moved to the Highlands with my mum and whatever, and we ended up in Partick. But we were penniless, you know what I mean? But we lived in Partick, so I wasn't living in Govan as a kid, or I wasn't living back in Castlemilk or Polso or Merrick.
So see, Partick back then, was that the way it is still kind of the now? Is it still the same kind of way?
Still the same way. I mean, I went to school at Hingland, so it was a decent school, you know what I mean? You know, it was all of that. I mean, I left school with nothing, no education anyway. But having that background, I always felt was a, and you don't realise it at the time, but it's even at that level, it's a bit more privileged than a lot of kids were in Glasgow at the time. You know what I mean? You know, you don't realise that until years later.
So it wasn't until you're older you became aware of it?
No. I mean, me and my mate were talking the other day about a boy that just got jailed there for murder, and I went to school with him. He said he was a sound motherfucker. You know what I mean? You know, back in the 80s and stuff like that. And then addiction took him, and that was it.
That's the thing. That's what you hear so many stories. You know what I mean? People have got a lot of.
I mean, people forget back in the 80s and all that heroin was the rugger choice back then.
100%. I see it all the time.
Yeah, and you see the after effects all the way through now, you know what I mean?
We're lucky. This generation is lucky because we're able to look at people, see that when they started taking heroin, they're looking at them now and you're like, fuck, I don't want to end up like that. No. But back then, you never had that. It was just the next big drug. See, if it came out now, if it came out now, fucking half the cunts had bit of school would have been on it.
I mean, it's coke, obviously, and stuff like that.
Aye.
But that's the whole mental health side of it. But with heroin and stuff like that, you don't come off that stuff. It takes, you know, that 20-year cycle kind of thing.
I've heard with the withdrawals, man. It's like fucking going through fucking purgatory or something, man. It's fucking maybe brutal. I've heard a few. I watched a few documentaries and that, and you see a lot of addicts, and it's quite fucking evident. Know what I mean? There wouldn't be so many people still hooked in the stuff if they could get it off it easily enough. Know what I mean?
It's like, even like when I went to prison, we can touch on this whenever we start. It's kind of like I even as a 30-year-old getting into prison in England, looking at how many drug addicts there was, and that was in 2000s, 2008 and stuff like that. And it was like the biggest thing that always struck me even afterwards was how we're not treating people, how we're not treating that, how, you know, why are we sending all these guys with drug addictions who are committing crimes obviously to feed their habit into prison. And it's just that consent. And that's kind of part of the reason why I started Unlock Employment years later, was to help people not to go into prison. You know, that's one of the biggest things that my thought process is, and what we try and do. But yeah, it's mental. That if you try and deal with the drug, if you spend twice as much money or 3 times as much money trying to solve addiction or supporting addiction, your prison levels would go down.
But that's the thing, if the prison levels go down, then the money goes down because the prison's a big money maker as well. I think Berlin is one of the biggest methadone providers in the UK.
Well, and again, it's not even my expert knowledge on it and stuff like that. But it's like you speak to me like James Dockett, they're the kind of guys. Speak to them; they'll give you right insight and stuff like that about how they manage drug addiction and stuff like that. And it's just a continual cycle within the NHS side of, you know, taking care of people and stuff like that. But the reality is, you're not taking care of people. You're just warehousing drug addicts. I read that the other day actually.
That's
you know?
quite a fine way to put it, really, man.
That was my experience even like 10, 12 years ago. You know what I mean? You know, it was mental.
So was it down in England you served your sentence?
I lived in Birmingham, and I was Glasgow, and then I met a lassie on holiday, as you do back in the 90s. And then I moved to Birmingham. And
what age were you at that point?
I was 27.
All right, just about my age. I'm 20.
I made that jump, and I was a postman working in a mail centre. And then when you moved to England, it was just a complete and utter different country, but it was a different world. You know what I mean?
Back then it was, especially.
You know, it was like how multicultural it was. You know, how it was just all this new stuff and all that. And then I became a manager at Royal Mail, which in Glasgow I would never have done because you were involved in the union, or your mates all worked within the same circle, and you were all. If you became a manager, you were kind of like.
Seems a traitor.
You were a traitor, exactly. That's exactly how it was. Do you know what I mean? You know, because you were moving to that other side. But in England, didn't know anybody like that. And I remember I went to a manager in Birmingham. There was a big meeting. There was a boy that killed himself before I'd moved there. Hung himself, and he blamed the management team within the mail centre. It was really bad, and it was a whole race thing as well. So they brought in this new area manager. And he gave a speech about, you know, we're going to change this and we're going to do this and change cultures. And I bumped into him as we walked out this meeting. There was about 200 people involved in it. I says, listen, you can't do this. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, your managers here ain't capable of doing this. I says, because they're too ingrained with everything that's going on within this mail centre. And he went, who are you? And I told him who I was. And he went, so what are you going to do about it? And I says, what do you mean? He said, stop complaining to me. He said, if you want to change it, become a manager and change it. And I did. Within 6 months later, I applied for the next round of managers that came up when I was a manager. And it just blossomed. Within about 2 years, I was like shift manager and stuff like that, and running the mechanised site and doing whatever. But secretly, I was stealing all the credit cards.
Oh, really?
Aye.
So how did you start doing that? What got you? Did you just fucking chance it one day or something?
I don't know. It was if I'm going to be honest about it, which I've kind of spoken about it before. So I was married, had a family, 2 kids. I was having an affair with a lassie that I worked with in the mail centre, and basically what I was doing was living the life as I was about 30 odd by this time, and I was living the life of that kind of, perfect family, high, manager, had a career path and stuff like that. But then having an affair, and then what I started doing was I started stealing the credit cards to kind of fund that lifestyle with her, So I had the family where the wages went to the wife and the kids, paid the mortgage, done whatever. But then I used to go out on a Friday and no come home to a Sunday, all that
really?
carry. I went through a whole change in personality and who I was as a guy. Turned into I don't use the word prick, you know what I mean, to a point, And but I was stealing credit cards, and then it just carried on. It was probably the biggest buzz I've ever had in my life.
Was it just one of the ones that started off a wee fucking get away with it once time here or there, then just, well, if I've got away with it once, I'll keep doing it kind of thing?
Got away and I just couldn't stop. Just could not stop. And then by the time I was getting promoted within the managers and stuff, and there was the Royal Mail investigation team, they actually took me in to their confidence, and they would take me into their it was like a wee room like this with all the security cameras, and they would get me in to try and identify people that were stealing stuff. Because I was a manager, I was shift manager, I was running it, or they were telling me, look, we identified him, so we want you to put him working here, so whatever, and then they would tell me all the cameras that didn't work as well.
For fuck's sake,
So,
really,
so I was getting mail moved to certain locations, and
You know the cameras weren't working?
and then I was stealing it all.
Fuck's
And
sake,
I was
man.
stealing trays of credit cards that came from Northampton. And so all of this is kind of, I've told, this was all part of when I got arrested. I told the police about it, so I'm not disclosing anything. That
You're not telling anything that doesn't know
no, I
anyway.
didn't, no. So all of that was all part of that came out, and it just escalated. I was stealing 1 or 2 cards, and then it was eventually I was taking 50 cards at a time and stuff like that, you know, in a tray, putting it in my bag, and then out the 50 cards I'd probably maybe activate about 20 and probably take about, you know, £300-400 off each card, or £1,000 or a couple of grand, or just depends, whatever it was. So yeah, that carried on for a while, and but as things do, it comes to an end, you know.
Of course, all
And,
good things do come to an end, didn't they?
Does, you know, and I'd actually left Royal Mail. I get headhunted. This is how crazy it was. I kind of get headhunted by the German postal company, DPD, in Birmingham at the time, and they'd sent me. Basically, they offered me a position working for them in Birmingham, in their distribution hub, and it was like 40-45 grand with a company car. So within about a 6-7 years period of time, went for a postman to this manager and whatever.
Quite high up.
And or at least it was, you know, it was going, and you know, and I'd left my wife at this point, and I was with she was going to be my second wife, Cindy, and then within 6 months, the police came through my door after I'd left Royal Mail.
So that take obviously the credit cards that stopped when
They'd
you
all
left Royal Mail.
stopped, but I'd kind of stockpiled a whole load of them in the house, obviously.
Oh, so you still
which
had
is
it.
why they caught me with so many.
Right,
you
I
know,
see.
Which was crazy. It was a bit, and then when I'd left my ex-wife, she packed up all my stuff, and there was a load of credit cards that she found, and they were in an old suitcase that was at the bottom of the wardrobe. So they found all this present stuff, and then they found all this stuff for 2 years previous.
So they were able to make that connection.
So they were able to go, well, where's the rest of the 2 years, you know? And I'm like, well, so that's where we kind of, you know, it was kind of called when you get charged and stuff like that, you taking into consideration other charges. So they put all that against me as well, kind of thing, without putting a value against it. But they put that against me with that. But anyway, so I was looking at 5 years, and you know, obviously my life had fallen apart, sitting in a prison, you know.
Did you lose your job at DPD?
Oh
at the time?
yeah, I lost everything, lost the whole lot, and then I get arrested on like December the 4th, and I didn't get bail because they knew, they thought there was more, they thought it was involved in money laundering and all this carry on.
Oh right, possibly a flight risk kind of thing.
It was all sorts of stuff, but it was just me. It was just me. They thought it was involved with like a group and stuff. And anyway, so I was then, when you get into prison, you're offered the chance to take, you know, bail, you know, within, you can apply for it. And I decided against that. I just decided to stay in because I knew I was going to get, well, I thought I was looking at 3. We were looking at 3. And then, so I thought, well, why get out just to get back in?
Just to prolong it.
You know, and it was my first time ever in prison. So I just thought, if I get out, I'm never wanting to go back, but I'm going to have to go back, you know.
So you may as well just stick it in now. How did you feel when you were in for the first time?
It was mental. It was crazy. I literally went from one world to another.
The highest of those. What jail were you in?
Blakenhurst. It's now H&P Hull in Birmingham, just outside at Redditch. And it was actually, it was crazy. It was mental. It was like, I remember, I always give this description the first. So I was held in the cells for 5 days by the police, and taken to court on the Friday, and then taken straight to prison, and then for court. And I remember getting in, you're held in the holding cells, and then you're put into a bigger cell, bigger area, and it was kind of like, it was just like, it was like an American movie at one point, because when they took us to the wing was like the length of the corridor out here with bars. I don't know if you've been in prison or been.
I have, but up in Scotland, I've been in English.
Right, so it was kind of, and when we get taken up to the wing, it was about 5:30. So then everybody was out for their dinner, stroke, recreation time kind of thing, you know. And it was a Friday as well, so there was a buzz.
There was
a whole buzz, and I didn't get all this. But as I walked up, and on it, and you know, there was like about 6 black guys, 6 black dudes all standing at the bars like that. Now, you're not supposed to stand at the bars. There's like a gap, you know. And then And I walked up, and I'm like, and it was just like it was this big racket because everybody's out. You know,
they're all talking, they're all jovial, they're all fucking talking about their business, doing whatever, getting on the phone, shit like that, man.
The next minute, I see these dudes pointing at me, going, "We'll get him when he gets in." Right? I'm honest, honest to cry, because honestly, I'm this 30-year-old white dude. You know what I mean?
He's done it like
my hair was a mess because I've been in the cell for 5 days in there, shower, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Anyway, nothing. I get in, I get put in the top landing, and it was fine. You need to find your feet when you walk in. You know. And for me, it was really mental. It was really mental. I never get bullied in prison. I never get attacked. Never get anything. I found it a terrible place. Actually, the worst thing about prison was how fucking dirty it was. You know what I mean?
Oh, was it man cave?
Just man cave. It was just the clatty places. You know what I mean? You know, but I met a lot of good guys. You know what I mean? You know, that proper sound guys, and I always said prison was 90% full of arseholes and 10% full of good guys.
Nah, it's the same everywhere, isn't it, man? It's like you think jail's different. It's the same as your work. It's the same as fucking school. I think it's like school.
It's just like life.
Isn't it, man? You find your fucking good seeds and bad seeds.
You find your good guys and your bad guys. But then we get moved on to another wing, and I was on the same wing with a couple of the boys that was on, and I ended up with a proper boy for Coventry, actually. And for some reason he took to me on the basis that he loved my story, because everybody in prison tells lies.
Right? Cunts like to make out the Mr. Biggs and all that shit, man.
Tells lies and all that. And but when I told my story about why I was in, you know, people, it was like, Jesus, you know, it was like, what the, you know what I mean? And because I done it myself, there was more of that. You know, I didn't
get balls.
I didn't get. That was what it was all about.
They admired it, respected you.
You kind of do the thieving, but then you need to do the actual buying with the credit cards. You know what I mean? You know, and so there's two bits to it. You know, so you kind of get drawn or attracted to a certain type of people and stuff like that. And then there's the whole kind of staying alive. You know, I always use the kind of. You know,
the Bee Gees term.
I was listening to Bee Gees the other day, actually. But
great band.
But the kind of stuff like, you know, I learned like every morning I get up, I went for a shower, kept myself clean, right? You know, all of that kind of basic stuff that you kind of picked up quickly in prison, that the ones that were kind of going that way were the ones that just didn't take care of themselves, you know. Mm-hmm. So I always made sure I was up, went for a shower, but also the other side of it was, because prison's predatory, innit? You know, they look at the weakest.
They pick the weakest, man, and they prey in it, man. It's just like any kind of pecking order anywhere you go.
Yeah, so I kind of realised quickly, was like, no, I'm going to no stay myself, be out, associate, go into the yard, go in, get showered, went to the gym, and through stuff like that, you kind of meet people, you meet guys, you know, you get talking to guys, and from that, I realised pretty quickly that's how you survived. You know what I mean? You know. It wasn't playing the big man, it wasn't doing this, it wasn't doing that, it was just playing the game, you know what I mean, you know. And that was that, all of that. But I mean, through all of that, Birmingham was mental, because you had, like, during that time there was a lot of gang fighting in Birmingham with the Johnsons and the Burger Boys, the two big gangs. There was a shooting in Birmingham, and loads of shootings in Birmingham, but these boys were like proper, you know, that Yardies boys and stuff
like kind of war kind of thing.
And that was all kicking off in the prison as well at the time when we were there, and that was mental, you know. So you kind of try to survive all that, and taking all that in, as well as being in prison.
Especially if you go and feel like a manager at DPD, you know what I mean, and flying
into
all this.
Everything, you know.
And fucking in here, Yardy gang wars and all that shit, man.
My first wife, she's greeting, going, we're going to lose the house. My second missus, she's like, what the fuck am I going to do? So sold all my watches and stuff like that. And anyway, so I ended up I got an 18-month prison sentence, which was fucking brilliant.
So was that part of a plea deal?
No, it was just that went no, it was mental. I was looking at 5 for the crime that I'd done, maximum 5, but because I went guilty straight away, it kind of goes to 2.5 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. So depending on what judge you get, they'll half it, right, and you'll get 2.5, depending whatever. And my barrister, I done this thing. So when you get up and get charged, I'll tell you a wee story.
Tell as many stories you want, my man.
Tell a wee story. Because I don't want it to be about prison, but this is funny.
No, I
So
keep going. I love it.
when I get charged on the Friday, and there was 265 charges put against me, right? Because there was 200 odd credit cards, right?
Right, so each individual one.
Yeah, and then there was whatever. So then, also on top of that, there was like the 11 main charges. So like theft against an employer, theft of whatever, they put handling stolen goods against me. The fact that I purchased stuff and it was stolen, and there was that, and so there was 11 main charges against me, and then 265 taken into consideration.
Did you get extra charges because it was the Royal Mail as well? Because
Well, that was the biggest one. That's what I got my 18 month for, was theft against an employer, but because it was against Royal Mail and I was a manager, it went higher again. As in like that, I was looking at 5 years for that as opposed to 3 or 4. But there was a wee box that you had to write this bit, and if you wanted to write in about, to say you were sorry, basically.
Oh, right, aye.
Okay, I've still got it.
I'd be sorry, little you fucking punishment exercise.
It's like a wee box, and the sergeant said to me, he says, look, you can write this bit in here. It's for the judge to tell you about your remorseful and stuff like that. And I've never been in situations, so I looked about, and the CID guy, he went, just write something. So I did. So I wrote this. I'm really sorry I brought the company into disrepute. I'm really embarrassed about what I've done, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, when I get sentenced, the judge actually read that out, and he cut my sentence for 2.5 to 18 months.
Fucking hell, so it took, what they take fucking, what's that, 2.5, a year off?
It took a year.
Took 12 months off,
It took 12
know?
months off on the basis of that I'd shown contrition at the earliest possible time. I didn't, so there was little bits like this that I didn't know about. You don't know about.
It's a strange thing.
Like
I've never heard of that happening in Scotland. I think it's just been English.
It's like what was the bit as well? Where the amount of guys that I met in prison, who there was a boy who was in my cell. I met him after prison actually, and he stole a Range Rover, twat, stealing without contempt, put the keys through with the gripper, stole the keys. And they used to travel down to Essex and steal the big cars, and they get about 5k for each car.
Oh, the ID ringers.
Yeah, right. But then they hit somebody on the way back on the line, killed him like that, right?
Fuck's sake.
Anyway, they had his DNA, they had pictures, they had this, they had that, and he was still going not guilty. But as I'm in the cell with him, going, "Why are you going not guilty?" I says, "They've got all this evidence." I says, "If you go guilty, you're going to get time off your sentence." Oh no, can I go guilty? And I just couldn't get this through my head with these guys. It's going, no, we'll fight it. Anyway, he went guilty. I found out later he went guilty, and he ended up with 5 years. But there was things like that whole mentality about, it's not about getting caught and putting your hand up, but it's like, if you're caught, you're caught. You know what I mean? If they catch you, So there was like wee bits like that. But anyway, so at the Friday morning, it's like 9:30, and I'm walking between Halezone Police Station and the court, and there's actually a tunnel underneath the road. You would never know. It's like connect.
So it takes you from the police station to the court?
Yeah, to the court, and it's underground, right? So anyway, I'm going through. I'm getting handed over for the coppers to I think it was G4S security guard. And I'm hurrying. I've got my paperwork. My paperwork's like about that thick, so like that.
A fucking novel.
Yeah. So I gave him the officer gave it to him, and he's went up, shut the doors, and I've got handcuffs on at this point. He's walking through. And as we walked through the tunnel, he looked behind like that, and he went, "Wait a minute," and he's looking at my papers, and he went, "What the fuck is this?" And I went, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm petrified. I'm terrified at this point because I'm going to court for the first time in my life. He went, "I've never seen anything like this in my life," right? And I'm going, "What are you talking about?" He went, "How many charges have you got against you?" And I'm like, it was about 275 there. And he's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And I went, what? He went, "Normally when I walk people through here, they've got one sheet of paper, 2 at most. You've got a fucking book."
Fuck's sake. And I'm like, fill you with confidence,
and I'm like, "Do you think I'm going to get bail?" And he starts laughing. and that was kind of like my welcome as I'm getting into court. And sure enough, they didn't give me bail. But you got to remember, what I done was like, in the grand scale, and I'm not defending it and putting it into context. It was like, it's like that big on to whatever, you know, half the shit that I seen when I went inside. But there was all these wee bits that I always remember, these wee bits that kind of, the wee funny bits, but they're not funny at the time, you know. Or the bit like even when I get sentenced and I get out and they'd shut the door behind me and I started celebrating. And the G4S guy, he's going, oh, what did you get? Found not guilty? And I went, no, I've got 18 months. It's brilliant. And he's like, I've never seen anybody celebrating.
But we didn't celebrate, but we just jumped in the boot.
Just jumped the boot. Because I thought I was going to be, I thought I was seriously getting 2.5 to 3 years. So I'd already worked out I was doing at least over a year in prison, right? Or a year and a half before I get, you know, considered for half, you know, way release. And
remission and all that shit.
18 months I was getting out in 6 months, right? Because you do 9 months, but then you get 3 months on tag.
Right.
So theoretically, I was getting out after 6, which was before my daughter's birthday. So there was all stuff like that you kind of that you learn pretty quickly. But I didn't realise until I went to court. The day before I went to court, when I was sitting with a couple of the boys talking about sentencing and stuff like that, and they went, always remember, whatever you get, you only do half. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Did you not know that?
No, I didn't know. And I'd been sitting in jail for about nearly 2 months, still didn't know that. My brief didn't tell me, nobody told me, I didn't know it. But then again, they don't tell you stuff unless you ask them questions.
Aye, because plus I know you're kind of expected to have a lot of basic knowledge of that. It's as if that's like part of the kind of competence test, know what I mean, when going into jail.
Whereas me, it was like my first time and stuff. So all that kind of stuff was kind of, and then literally within 2 days, I was shipped out of an open prison. I was shipped down to Bristol.
About 2 days of your sentence, you were shipped out of an open
2 days after I get sentenced, I get shipped.
So long were you on remand for before you get sentenced?
2 months.
Oh, so you've done a 2 month remand then get a sentence?
Yep, and that was all taken into consideration as well. I've done about 3-4 months in Open Nick, and that was just a holiday camp.
Oh, was it? Aye, what Open Nick did you go to?
Lay Hill down Bristol way, and I mean that had like tennis courts, pitch and putt, 3 gyms, football pitches.
No way to leave it, man.
And it was like, yeah, it was just another. Again, it was like, you know, I talk about actually the open prison was sometimes a bit worse than what. You know, the stuff that you see in prison is crazy, you know, the violence and but then there's the other side of it, you know, I talk quite openly to my friends and stuff like that, talking about how horrific it is about like partners leaving people, you know.
Whilst they're in the jail.
I mean, my own missus left me, she left me when I was in jail, but I seen other guys literally, I seen one guy was a Welsh boy who literally couldn't deal with it and turned straight to heroin.
Oh, did he? Aye.
And he was fucked, he was gone. And then I seen other boys that I was pally with, you know, you only kept so many acquaintances and things like that. But the amount of drug dealing that was going on in the open, stuff that was just, it was bad, you know what I mean? Because it was just that easily available, you know what I mean?
It's rife, man. I know a boy,
he was
boy for Luton, he just don't know, but he was in an open jail. I see him, I followed on his Instagram story, man, out at fucking exercise, smoking joints.
I mean, going back 10, 12 years ago, we were literally, I mean, Cindy, she would bring me in money, cash, so we get a takeaway delivered, and it would be taken over the fence and stuff.
Was it? Aye. But did the screws know about it, or was this just?
It was kind of one of the things that was all turned a blind eye to. You know what I mean?
That was a spoken secret kind of thing.
It was one of the ones, but there was just that whole kind of the mental health side of it, which wasn't really spoken as much to what it was just now. You know what I mean? But even it's the effects afterwards. You know, I mean, like me, I get out. And I was banged up again within about 2 weeks. Cause I just started drinking when I got up.
Oh, really?
I went mental. I kind of couldn't deal with it. Couldn't deal with the whole loss of everything. And then I breached my tag. I went out, got drunk, and I was breached. And I thought, fuck it, I'm just going to stay out all weekend.
Fucked it now anyway. You're getting back right away.
Booked a hotel, and I was with some bird, and we just stayed out all weekend. And then went home. And I get lifted literally within about 12 hours. That's what it was. And then I get taken to Birmingham, HMP, Winston Green. That was mental as well. I was there, so I was there for the remainder of that. I'd done about 2.5 months in there. And then when I was in Winston Green, I then decided, right, I'm back in prison. You know what I mean? What the fuck's going on? You know what I mean?
Just try to fucking struggle to come to terms with it, man.
So I made the decision then to come back to Glasgow, and I managed to get my licence transferred to Glasgow, which again I didn't know at the time. It was quite rare to have it done so quickly. Because if not, I was leaving Winston Green and going to a homeless unit.
Aye, so
Because you needed somewhere to go, you know. And I'd made the relationship with my wife, well, my ex-wife, my missus at the time was gone. So I went back to Glasgow and I moved back with my mum. And that kind of saved me to a point, you know. And then within 2 months, literally, I got a job at McDonald's up in Four Corners in town.
Oh, no, just down the road.
Just along the road. And I was like 35 about this, 35, 36. And I was in there flipping burgers with all these 16, 17-year-olds. And it was the best year of my life. It was one of the best years of my life. It was just, you remember I came out of prison thinking, you know, I just didn't know what the fuck I was ever going to do with my life. You know, I'd been in Royal Mail for like 16, 17, 18 years.
It was all you knew.
It was all I knew, you know, even though I'd left or whatever. So then I went and took a job at McDonald's. I was offered opportunities for boys that I'd met in England to potentially go back into crime. But you got to remember what I done is I done it myself and nobody ever knew about it, you know, right? Nobody ever knew. It was only done myself. And but when you go into prison, it is like, you know, but people don't like talking about it so much, but it is like a university of crime.
Oh, it is. Plus, I know people see opportunity in that. Well, if this guy done it right, you know what I mean? I can learn for this guy, or I can work with this cunt.
So it's like, I mean, I get a phone call. I get a phone call from Cardiff basically saying, you know, look, we'll sort you with money, come on down, come on, join the organisation. You know, it was like all crazy shit. So, no, I ended up having to make a decision to go down this path that I've never been in, even though I was in prison. So I went and worked at McDonald's, and within a year, which was great, I then applied for a job in Birmingham, in KFC, and ended up as a shift manager in KFC down in Birmingham.
Oh, no,
and then within 6 months I was a restaurant manager, or assistant restaurant manager, and then within less than a year, so that got me back to Birmingham to be with my kids.
So what made you want to go back to Birmingham?
My kids.
Oh, aye, because your kids, your family was still doing there. So did you just move back to Glasgow yourself?
Moved back to myself, but then the last my girlfriend at the time, who I'd left my wife to be with, and she'd left me when I was in prison, she came back to Glasgow to say that she wanted me back, kind of thing, you know. So I kind of used that opportunity to go back to Birmingham as well, so I got a job. So I was kind of my kids there. I had 2 kids at the time, and then within about a year I was working for Iceland as a store manager. It was called Cool Trader at the time. It was like their discount stores. So literally within about 2.5 years out of prison, about 2 years out of prison, I was a store manager with a big safe with 30 grand in it. You know what I mean? You know?
Fuck's sake, man! Pure temptation right in your lap, man.
Well, to be honest with you, you've got to remember, like, the whole stealing bit, the whole theft bit, it wasn't like I was a klepto thief that I just wanted to steal all the time, right? It was, I always put it down to circumstances in life. So it wasn't like that for me. It wasn't like I'd stolen all my life, you know what I mean? You know, it was just that period of time.
I felt the pressure of trying to kind of live up to this kind of like, please as a word, plus and I'll keep your family kind of going as well.
I always remember the copper that had arrested me. He came down and spoke to me and he says, "Why did you do it?" He says, "You know, you're this, you're that, you're that. Why? But you didn't need to do it." And I went, "I didn't think I'd get caught." You know what I mean? You know, and it wasn't a bravado thing. It was just thought it was clever on everybody else. You know what I mean? You know,
at the start you think, you know, like, oh, 1 or 2 cares, nobody will notice. Then you just keep going, and before you know it, fuck it, I've got this far without getting caught. Know what I mean? It'll be brand new.
It was so that was kind of, it's kind of like a journey in my life that kind of went from here to here and then there, and then it was just mental. It was mental. But I mean, if you look at me, I mean, like, you know, 10 years ago, I was this manager, I was this, and people were like, they couldn't believe. It was like, you had the world at your feet, and you've done this, and you've lost everything, and you know, and I always kind of went, well, no, you know what I mean? You know, I walked into prison and I came out of prison the same guy, you know, and you know all the stuff they see, and then my family were still there, still had my kids. I was working, so I wasn't this loser that's kind of portrayed, you know, when you're kind of like, when you're no fake crime and you end up in prison and you lose everything. It's kind of, you can either fall on your arse and stay there, or you can work to get back up again. You know what I mean?
Hit rock bottom that hard, you bounce.
Aye, so that's kind of why I took, when I got the opportunity to take a job at McDonald's, I took it, you know what I mean? And then KFC and then whatever. But then everything changed in my life when I was store manager and this woman walked in and she worked for a company, employability company. She said, do you want to take somebody on for 4 weeks for free as part of an employability scheme? And I'm like, yeah, of course, yeah, whatever, you know. This young boy started for me. And she went, I'll be in, we're going to do CV, we're going to do this, and we're going to try and find him a job, and this is going to be work experience. Anyway, never saw her again. And during that 4 week time, so during that time, I kind of realised it was like, well, who's doing anything for this boy? You know, he's working for free, he's not getting paid. We weren't paying him. It was back, 10 years ago.
It was voluntary.
It was all voluntary, but they had to do it to get the benefits as well. It was all part.
Was it part of the benefits then?
Part of the benefits, and I'd kind of, and as much as I was a manager, back to management, back to taking free labour, I was like, this isn't right. So I knew the manager that worked in, it was B&M Bargains across the road in Erdington in Birmingham. I got my job in there part time. There was a job, so we'd done his CV and we got him in there. So the lassie came back about like 3 weeks after he'd finished, and she went, "Oh, what happened to him? Do you know what?" I said, "He's working across the road." And she went, "How did they do that?" And I said, "Well, I've done this and I've done that." And we got him an interview, and she went, "Oh, that was my job to do that." And I went, "Well, you never fucking done a very good job." You know?
Did you say that to her?
I said that to her.
What did she say?
Oh, she wasn't happy. But here's the story. Sarah, what was her surname? I'll remember it, right? I'll tell you why I remember it, because I ended up being her boss.
Fuck off, really? Aye?
So basically what happened, right? And this is the weirdest thing about my life. So 2 weeks later, I was going on holiday with Cindy. You know, life was back normal, and I was looking for another job because it was a nightmare working as a store manager. We were working 6 days from like 6 in the morning to like 7 at night. But it was great because it was a job. It was, and I was going to do anything. I didn't care. Anyway, the lassie that came in worked for this company called Forster. And I was looking through Indeed. No, it wasn't Indeed, it was Total Jobs, and I seen a job advertised, and it was for $6,000 more than what I was earning, and it was Monday to Friday 9 to 5, and it was for a manager working within the work experience side. And I thought, well, wait a minute, that's what I've just done for that boy. Anyway, long story short, I applied for the job, got the interview, and they offered me the job, right? And that was my first move into employability, and didn't know what I was doing, but it was, $25,000 a year. 2.5 years previous, I was sitting in a prison cell. I was back to where I was. It was a 9 to 5 job, and it changed my life. I ended up working in Aston in Birmingham, which wasn't that far from where my store was, and it was like basically working in Govan. Aston's like real area of multiple deprivation, massive unemployment, mass just poor people, just complete and utter deprivation in Birmingham. But anyway, again, I ended up working within unemployment, helping people back to work, helping people, and it was nothing I'd ever done in my life before, but it was working. It was called a work activity areas. So instead of sending people out to work, they had this big massive warehouse. So they had a warehouse, they had a canteen, they had a gym, we had security, we had mock work activity stuff and all that. So I was managing all that. And then within 6 months, I was promoted to be in charge of the employment consultants, who are the helping the people back to work. And it was really, when you get out of prison, you get this guys that end up back into work. They literally give like 150% when they go to work, just to keep a job, just to whatever. And my employer at the time, I'd declared to them I'd been to prison, and they still gave me the job.
Did they say it? How did they treat it?
They put me under special conditions that I wasn't allowed to access client personal data information, so they put a block on that. But I didn't need that information for the job that I was doing.
Right, aye, so it wasn't going to hinder you at all.
But then I get promoted, and I needed access, and they still wouldn't give me it. And it was kind of, which is fine. I didn't care. Listen, they could treat me, they could tell me whatever. They were paying me X amount of money, and I was loving life. And but then some massive things were changing. Was that I started working with guys I was in prison with. So because it was Birmingham, and guys were getting out of prison and they were coming into my centre, and at this point I was like third in charge in the centre kind of thing, and they were. I remember two boys walking in, like And one, but I'll always never remember. I'll never forget. He walked in and I looked at him and he looked at me and he went, "You're a screw for the prison, right?" And I went, "No, I was on your wing." And he went, "You're the Scottish guy. You're the Scottish guy for Royal Mail." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he went, "What the fuck are you doing?"
You're gobsmacked.
And I went, "I'm in charge." And he's like, "What the?" So anyway, long story short, I got him into work, right? So the job I was doing at the time, it was we had contracts, we had jobs, we had like a Caddo and Jaguar Land Rover and whatever, and I could put people's names in lists and they were getting interviews like that because that's how big we were at the time. You know? So I found that basically I was for Glasgow. I worked my arse off, and I had this Glasgow accent. In Birmingham, people would listen to you if you kind of talk to them a wee bit like that.
The Glasgow accent, it goes a long way down England, man. I think you're off your fucking nut.
Aye, and especially when you're working in the employability side of it, it's kind of like, oh, right, I'm not going to mess with him.
I'm not patching this job interview.
And then, but then there was the other side. There was, I remember I had the manager who was my boss, and she used to give like a team talk, and she used to come in all this stuff, and she'd go, "No, remember, you're changing people's lives with the job that you're doing, right?" And I always remember at the beginning, he says, "I'm laughing, going, oh, fuck me, man. Who believes this shit?"
Buff the cared pish.
You know, it's like, you know. But then after a few months, I kind of realised what she was talking about, as in, if you done your job right, you can support somebody into work, right? And I learnt this really quickly, was that you could be it's like the job centre, you could be shit at your job and you could sit there for years, right, and still do that same job, right, because you're dealing with people that are unemployed. If you do your job properly and you support somebody and you listen to them and you understand what the barriers to employment are, it doesn't matter if you've been to prison, mental health, if you understood what the barriers to employment were, right, and you listen to somebody, you could help them, right? You could understand that they didn't want to do this or they didn't want to do that, but they could do this or do that. And if you gave them that attention, if you gave them that bit of time, then you were going to get that back from them times 10 because somebody was giving them. And I learned there was a good management team, there was a good crowd of people, and then I was kind of thrown into the mix. And I did realise after a while that you do your job properly, you're changing people's lives. And it wasn't patronising, it really was like, you do your job properly, you can get somebody into work. So then it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks really as well, was that some of the boys that were like ex-offenders that were coming in, nobody knew how to deal with ex-offenders, this, you know, with employability. And then all of a sudden they've got a manager who's been to prison. It wasn't talked about, it wasn't discussed like that, but it was kind of spoken, you know. It wasn't. I never made it public. But
it was a known secret, kind of.
But it was a known secret. So basically, what happened was that I took a caseload on of people, which as a manager you weren't supposed to do, but I did, and all the caseload was all guys that had been to prison, and the reason was that I could then sit with people and talk to them, you know, and go XB6390, you know, guys would be like, "What? That's a Blakey number." And I was like, "It's my number," and they're like, "What the fuck?" But, you know, so all of a sudden that barrier just disappeared. But the barrier was that authoritarian thing, you know, because I'm sitting
that trust thing, it's like almost as when you go into the job centre, you feel automatically judged. And you feel that way, and it's like, this guy, he comes from like a fucking posh upbringing, he doesn't know my kind of background, he doesn't know, it gives you something to relate to. You know what I mean? It builds that trust.
That whole thing, you know. And then on the other side of it, I always played the Scottish card against the English, you know, so we had a lot of you know, Afro-Caribbean, with a lot of Asian, with a lot of Somalian. So I built a lot of trust with a lot of guys that weren't white, I'll be honest with you, you know, because I played the anti-English card. And but it wasn't in a negative way. Love
that kid, by the way.
It wasn't in a negative way. It was always in a way of, you know, but trying to break down barriers. That's no me. I'm no him. I'm no her. I'm no. This isn't. You know. So
I was you. You're basically saying I was you at one point. That's about a year or 2 years ago.
And then, you know, also the fact that my partner at the time, she was Indian, right? And so kind of when people find out that kind of things about you as well, it's kind of like oh, he's no English, because he's not British, and it's not, and I don't mean that in a negative way within today's society and stuff like that. But we're just talking about how do people relate to you. If you want to support somebody, how's somebody going to relate to you?
It's just like a Scotsman in England as a foreigner. Know what I mean?
Foreigner.
Basically, you're
It's
a
a
foreign
foreigner,
person. Know what I mean? As much as we're part of the fucking Britain and all that, you're
100%.
seen as a foreigner. Know what I mean? You speak like you don't speak anything like them. Know what I mean? You stone it like so.
So I kind of found it wasn't a knack of playing that, but I just had a knack of, especially with the whole ex-offender side of it, and it was like all of a sudden I was sitting with guys that I could literally get an interview for them next week. They would never have a chance of getting that interview because people wouldn't trust them, they wouldn't do this, they wouldn't do that. And then I was also doing stuff like, because I had a budget as well, so I would, guys that had been out of prison like 5 years or 4 years that just didn't understand or comprehend how like spent convictions were and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I educated myself pretty quickly in understanding that side of, because it was important to get people jobs, right? So I started paying for people's DBS check disclosures, and they were like 60 quid at the time. So guys and girls didn't even know that they could get their own DBS check, their own disclosure. You can literally go and pay for your own disclosure and find out exactly what's on there and find out what's spent and what's not spent. But what I was finding, and it was all a big educational side to me as well, was that there was lots of guys that had been out of prison for like 5-6 years and everything was spent, right? But they were still going to job interviews and putting their hand up and ticking the box and declaring it.
Realising that obviously if it's spent, you don't need to declare it.
So I kind of had this kind of, and I always use the word, I was in a privileged, and this was the life changer bit for me, was all of a sudden I was using my prison time to help people. I wasn't doing it deliberately. It was just that life.
Your experience, you were using the experience,
just
basically,
kind of experience.
And it was helping you in a job. No, I mean,
it was helping me in a job, and I loved it. I loved every second of it, and I embraced it. But then also on the other side of it as well, it wasn't just ex-offenders. It was just anybody. It was just being able to help anybody to get into work. And it wasn't like me. I was part of the team. It was like I ran a team of like 25 guys and girls that worked for me. And we just smashed it. We just smashed everything, and because the biggest thing that we drove, the biggest thing, and even like because at this point I was hiring people, and I'd never hired anybody for a job centre. I was hiring people that worked in retail. I was hiring people that had life experience. You know what I mean? People that had been unemployed, people that whatever, to come and work with people that were unemployed. And I was kind of encouraged as well when my top brass management, they let me run riot actually. And I ended up working in Northern Ireland. I ended up going over to Belfast and Derry, London.
Was that still through the same company?
Still through the same company because we'd won a contract over there, and I was given responsibility to go and set up the contract in Northern Ireland. And you got to remember, this is like 4 or 5 years after being in prison that all of a sudden, and I'm doing all of this,
You're back to the top again.
Back to the top.
Back to the top of the mountain.
But it was all about helping people and doing whatever. And then I get back to Birmingham and I get promoted again. I get my own centre, and I just went mental. I just literally was like getting as many everybody that was an ex-offender. I was getting them in, speaking to them, paying for disclosures, paying for forklift truck licenses, paying for whatever, just paying for whatever they wanted, whatever training they wanted that cost money. I would pay for it because I knew that guys and girls just needed that extra chance in order to get into work.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing that I learned was that, it was crazy. It was you just realised that I was lucky, and this is the other part about my life is that, I talk about getting a job at McDonald's, right? I was lucky to get the job at McDonald's because I walked in, and when I done the interview, he was more looking at me going, why is a 30-year-old guy wanting to work at McDonald's, right? So I kept the whole prison bit to the very end of the interview. And by that time, I kind of sold him that he was going to start me. And then I said, look, I need to disclose this to you. And he's like, oh, fuck, okay, I'm going to give you a chance. And that's kind of, so I kind of played that kind of way how to do it.
Aye.
But there's lots of guys, whether they be young, old, or whatever, they've been through the prison system that many times that they don't know how to do interviews, or they're getting into an interview and just declaring straight away. I need to tell you straight, and it's like, you're fucking blowing it, mate.
Mm-hmm.
You're blowing it straight away. So
There's tactics to it.
tactics, and it's about how you play it. So I didn't learn that. I just kind of used my brain a wee bit, you know. And I'm not saying I'm more intelligent than anybody else, but I'd worked all my life. Whereas a lot of the guys I was working with were young gangbangers for Birmingham, or they were just career criminals, or they were just guys that were going through addiction that needed a chance to have potential. So like I said, it's not like I helped everybody, but I know I helped hundreds more than what would have get into work, you know. But then also I was a centre manager, and it was my job to get people into work, so I just used a different tact. But I was the company kind of go-to guy for to help ex-offenders into work. But that kind of reflected on other sides as well, where it, you know, you realise that when you're dealing with barriers to employment, whether it's an ex-offender or whatever, it's just a barrier to employment. And that's what I learned as well, you know. So if an ex-offender, you need to tick a box, or, you know, you need to declare. Whereas if you've got mental health, or you're a single parent, or you're a mother, come back to work after 20 years after looking after your wains, they're all barriers to employment.
It all fits into the same kind of category.
And that's the way that's the way I looked at it. But I learned with good guys and good managers that kind of taught me that. And I loved it, fucking loved it. I was running riot, but I mean running riot as well was started drinking again, started partying again.
Oh, I see.
Oh, I started all that.
What was it that led you back into that kind of lifestyle? Just enjoying yourself? Was it a kind of celebration thing?
Just enjoying life, you know.
Just everything's going well, I'll celebrate.
Yeah,
kind of
relationship broke down again. There was no crime or anything like that. There was nothing to do with that. I think I had one of the personalities when I was a bit younger that you just enjoyed life, you know. You just went out and
I just been tied in a bit. You feel like after a while you feel a bit too trapped, maybe.
Too trapped, you know.
You just had to kind of rebel almost
And
to a
it was-
degree.
Yeah, I got a penthouse flat in Birmingham. I was earning decent money and all that kind of stuff. But there are no negative sides in life, you know. It's just about how do you control.
And how do you cope with it? How do you
How
deal
do
with
you
it?
deal with it? How do you control it? How do you deal with it? And but then I kind of burnt myself out. I've been working for just non-stop, and then the contracts were coming in again, just like we were talking about contracts earlier. So again, I was making some no wrong decisions, but I just knew I wasn't functioning right. And I ended up back in Glasgow, but it was a choice. I came back to Glasgow to live, as in, because my second marriage had broken down, and we were just whatever. And I just needed a break, so come back to Glasgow, come back to your home city, you know what I mean?
You always end up back here, man.
I ended up back, went back to Partick, got a wee flat up in Thornwood, and it was great, you know. I was going up and down to Birmingham, seeing the kids and stuff like that.
How was have you still working with Aston at the time, doing the employability?
No, so we literally, those contracts had all shut. It was called the work programme, and all the contracts were shutting down, so I took redundancy. I took a payoff, right? I took a payoff and came back to Glasgow. And it was kind of the plan was I'm going to come back and try my hand up here at employability. And then I took a wee job actually working in a call centre part-time, because I just wanted to decide what I was going to do. I wanted to, at this point, I was a decision. I was in my 40s, and it was a decision to, let's do it myself. Let's do something. Let's start something, you know. And it was mental, because also I came back to Glasgow at the time. This is like 3 years ago, literally 3 years ago. And lived experience, right, of the criminal justice system seemed to be the kind of buzzword, you know. It seemed to be that was kind of like, you know, when I get involved like with Twitter and stuff like that, it seemed to be like Glasgow and Scotland seemed to embrace the criminal justice side. But anyway, so I come up with this idea to start this wee company called Unlock Employment, and I called it Unlock Employment, as in unlock with a.
Well, so let's get unlocking the door, unlocking the gates,
yeah,
getting out.
And then there's the prison side, unlocking the gates, and then there's unlocking employment. And I started out on Twitter, as in this just wee Twitter account. I think it was actually about 3 years ago. And I was working in a call centre, but then I decided I was going to go for job interviews, so I went to the Wise Group and I went to a few others, and they didn't give me a job. Actually, they actually didn't employ me.
I went to the Wise Group. I done my CSCS.
Yeah. I actually work I work in partnership with them now.
Are they still doing kind of like training kind of stuff?
They're really good. They're really good. Yeah.
Are they still based just
across
across the road? Are they still that same building?
I think they were moving actually.
I think it's just doing that
literally,
direction.
yeah. I've been in it a few times. Yeah. And but there's a couple of wee stories. So I had this idea forming about that I wanted to, because I always had this bugbear about employability and about how people deal with employability. So the way I was talking to you about how I ran my centre, that wasn't the way that other people ran their centres, right? It really was,
very unorthodox.
Yeah, or just, if you don't get a job, we're going to sanction you, or you're at the back of the queue.
Aye.
And if you're not going to play ball, we're not going to deal with you.
It's a lot of pressure kind of put on you as a job seeker itself.
And it's a guy, that's it. That's it. If you didn't, whereas I never took that thing. I think it was because I'd been through prison, because I'd fallen on my arse, picked myself up, that I kind of always worked with my team to go, look, always give somebody a second chance, always give them a third chance. Obviously, like, try and find out what the problem is, or find out what the barrier is to whatever. But don't get me wrong, there's people that don't want to work.
No, it's clear. It's trying to find the issue that is at hand.
Yeah.
Whether it's somebody taking the cunt, or is there something a bit more underlying here?
Or is it just that they can't read, they can't write, or they're embarrassed, or whatever? Let's try and help. So that worked. That just worked. See that way of working with people. And then obviously with me working with my guys that were coming out of prison, and and it was like I was getting jobs through the roof, and people were going, yeah, well, it's because you're being to prison. And I was always like, no, it's not. It's because you're listening to somebody that's sitting in front of you.
Treat them like a human being, no a number.
They're asking for help, right? They may want to be here, or they don't want to be here, but the ones that want to be here are asking you for help, And that's what we're getting paid to do, our job, to do that, And I always found it strange when I was involved in working for my companies down in England and Birmingham, and that was that there was people there just taking a wage,
no interest, no passion to it, just there to collect the wage, as you say, easy job and
easy
out the rain.
And I was like, well, they don't want to work, so they don't want to whatever, So I couldn't work like that. I couldn't deal with people like that. That was the big side of it. But people always said, it's only because you've been in prison, so you think, and I'm like, no, it's not. That's not why I think like that. It's like, so then this whole thing formulated in my mind about, right, let's, and it was all about community employability. So I always go back to when I worked in Aston, right? It was in the heart of the community, So it was kind of a wee bit of a focal point for the community as well. So there was a gym in it, there was like a canteen in it that served, cut price meals and stuff like that. So people were actually coming in to get fed, and then we were engaging with them to help them get into work. These were all people that were there. So I come up with this kind of thought process. If I was ever going to start anything, I'd want to be at the heart of the community. Don't want to be in the city centre. I don't want to be in a big office. I want to have somewhere that's in the heart of the community. So like I say, I was living in Partick, and then I ended up in Govan. I went to see this wee charity, Scottish Action for Refugees, because I'd seen something about it, and I went to see Claire, who was running it. And I noticed that they had some computers in the back. And I said, what are you doing with them? They went, oh, they're kind of just for any of the guys and girls that come in. And I says, well, if I come in on a Monday morning and use your back office there, I'll support anybody that comes in that wants to go into employment. And she's like, would you? And I went, yeah. I says, because that was me giving myself a base for unlock employment, And that's how that started. And then within literally about 2 months of coming in and working on a Monday, and then I used to come in on a Wednesday as well. But then after that, I was taking somebody around the corner who was going to some ESOL classes, and I was just taking them around to the community hub. I met a guy called Ryan who worked for Govan Housing. And
no, Ryan Davidson, is it?
Ryan Davidson.
He'd get in touch with us. He got in touch with us, he left us a voicemail. I met to get in touch with man. He does a lot of community projects and that kind of stuff. That's what he was contacting us about. I've still not spoken to him yet.
So Ryan's phenomenal. So Ryan, I spoke to Ryan. He said, who would you do? And I went, oh, I run Unlock Employment. So at this point, I'm Unlock Employment, but it's on Twitter. I had some cards printed up. I've got a wee base around the corner.
Was this all still voluntary at the time?
No,
making any money at this point?
No money, nothing at all.
So we still working in the call centre at the time,
part-time? I literally gave up the call centre when I got the wee base at Safa, right? That was when I made that decision. And he said, oh, never heard of you. He says, but we used to have jobs in Business Glasgow in here, but the funding ran out and they finished. I went, oh, when
I used to work with them, they were actually quite good. Right. They were kind of the same kind of aspect. They were quite interested to get you into work and that kind of stuff.
wait, when are they here? And he went, well, they used to come in on a Monday and Wednesday afternoon. I says, well, who's here now? And he went, nobody. And I went, I'll do it. And he went, what? He went, well, we can't pay you. And I said, no, forget that, because the hub they had 6 computers, beautiful little place, kitchen, bathroom, and it was Wi-Fi and a printer. And he went, what? And I went, I'll come in Monday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, and I'll support anybody that walks through the door that's looking for a job. And I went, actually send your housing clients to me. I said, I'll support them. And literally within about 3 months, we got about 25 people into work.
Oh, really? Aye.
Oh, yeah. It was that. Because the people that walked through the door wanted to work, right? So this is the other difference.
You find that with jobs in business Glasgow, you're not usually, it's not one of the ones you find, it's not a job centre like Working Links kind of thing, you need to go, you're just you're dragging your heels. This is one you can actually need to kind of interact with them off your own back.
Well, they had gone, so I'd taken their space, their empty space, you know. So then Ryan actually came up with this idea to apply for funding through the housing to pay me to deliver the employability. So we ended up getting a wee bit of funding, and Ryan, I was getting paid to deliver 2 half days a week. And that's how it started. And then literally within about 6-7 months, I got in front of some council people, and we were talking about all the work we were doing. Because I was getting about 10 people into work a month, right? Just because what happened was I was working 2 days, 2 half days. Well, actually that ended up spreading out to be about 2 full days and a half day, because the place was empty.
Right, but you were only getting paid for the 2 half days, but you were working like in back. But
well, I used to come in and work. So then what happened was, when I got that, I moved to Govan. So I moved from Partick to Govan because I had the keys to the centre. So basically what I was doing was opening up on the weekend as well. So I was opening up on a Saturday. And I literally was just living and breathing it all. Whenever when anybody was in the hub, I'd go and open up, put my had a wee sandwich board at the time outside, job club pointing in, and people would just come in under droves.
Oh, no.
But at this point, I was kind of building up my contacts within the community. So I was going around speaking to everybody. How you doing? I'm Jerry, Unlock Employment. You go handing out my cards. If you get anybody that needs to do any work, come and see me. So, and then I was on social media, shouting and bawling about, free employability support, come and support me. And then anybody were getting into work, and you'll see it, can't you? You're going through my timeline on Unlock. It's just people that we support and taking pictures and promoting it. And during the whole time, people were going, well, how are you getting paid? What are you getting paid by outcomes? And I'm like, no, it's free. We deliver a free service, point of entry. Doesn't matter what your barrier is. If you just want a job, you just need support, come on in and talk to us, and we'll support you. So it just grew, and then we had companies like Remploy got in touch. I knew some of the contract managers in England, and they made connections up here. So then we were signposting people to Remploy, which was an employability support group at the time in Glasgow, but we were still supporting them in Govan, but then sending them to get support with employment from other companies as well. So we were just growing in reputation. But the reputational wise was, I'm a big believer is that don't call yourself an employability company if you don't help people into work, right? Stop talking about positive destinations and training. It's brilliant, that is, but the end product of your job is to get somebody a job, right?
Yeah, produce the result.
That's what it is. So we always worked on that basis, and we really were getting jobs, and we still do. It went down a wee, it's slowed down a wee bit just now, but we literally were getting 10, 12 jobs a month, and that was just me working at this kind of space.
Was that just to be a couple of days a week and that kind of thing? Or
it was kind of getting into a full-time thing because social media was picking up, so I was dealing with stuff at home, I was dealing with stuff over the weekend, you were reacting to stuff. I would open up on a Saturday or a Sunday just to support a couple of people that couldn't get in during the week. So it was just this focal point for people to come to. But on the back of that, Govan Housing, they were running like their own, like on a Wednesday afternoon, they would do cooking classes, and then they would have a community meal at like 12 till 2. So what they cooked in the morning would feed. So there was like 40 people would turn up for that. So I'm in there, sitting with everybody eating. I was getting fed every Wednesday. It was great. But then I was going, right, who's looking for work? And then before you know it, was like people were coming in to get
word
fed,
of mouth kind of
word
thing.
of mouth was coming about. Said, Jerry will help you get a job. Come on in. What is it you need? Right, okay. Finish your grub. Come on next door. Or then what I used to do with people was I was booking people in with appointments on a Wednesday. And they were saying you get a free lunch as well. You know.
So it was that added kind of
all
aspect
that.
to
It was
it.
all of that. So it was all about community. So this whole ex-offender lived experience side of it as well, people would always say, well, it's just ex-offenders you help in it, because obviously you need a catch to get your name out there as well. So I used that as well, you know, and it was a positive thing to do at the time. But then it was like, no, look, everything we do is, it needs to be about helping everybody and anybody in the community, you know. I mean, like tomorrow I've got a mother bringing in their son, right? I mean, the last 4 weeks, actually, I've had 5 parents bringing their kids, you know, contacting me. Can you help my son? Can you help my daughter? So I've got a mother bringing the thing in. I've got a guy that's about 55 coming in tomorrow. He's not worked for about 6 years. He's coming in. Just needs a bit of support with CV and stuff like that. And I've got another couple of boys that are coming in to see me tomorrow. That all through here, word of mouth, through the community about what it is. And then I picked up the contract called the Govern Job Match, which gave me a full-time wage. And I just kind of went from strength to strength. Samantha came to work for me, and although she was only volunteering actually to start with, and we managed to pull a bit of funding. But then COVID hit, you know. COVID kind of
bastard COVID, man.
COVID hit after about a year of, you know, we were running great guns and everything shut down. So, and then my centre shut down, obviously, because of what we're doing. So then what happened was all the food banks started popping up in Govan. So I was quite closely linked to an organisation called Govan Youth Information Project, GIP. And Kevin, he was doing the food thing. So I started getting out volunteering, doing the food distribution for the kids stuff and all that. Because I was not doing anything, you know. But then what I noticed was a lot of the guys and girls that were using all because we'd done it on the back of the Salvation Army food trucks, a lot of the people that I was supporting into work were coming up and getting the free food. So I started helping them. So what I was doing was saying, right, let's get your CV sorted, let's do this, let's get you applying. So while we were doing the food stuff, I was doing all my employability stuff. So it was kind of like, how do you support people? Well, it's about engagement. It's all about the engagement factor. And I knew that, you know, when the shutdown came, we were going to be shut for 3 months. I was going to lose that 3 months engagement because people weren't going to job centres, everything was shut, and you lose all of that. So I was literally out every day doing all the food stuff, doing the jobs, then getting home, and then doing all the jobs. So like the first month, in the first shutdown, we actually supported 5 people into work within that first month. And that was just doing basic stuff like helping them with their CV, doing, you know, Zoom calls or WhatsApp calls or through Messenger and stuff like that.
So was that how you were keeping in touch with them? Was it like through Zoom calls now? Obviously, because you couldn't keep the huddle hub open?
Through the digital stuff. And then we came out of lockdown, and then Samantha that works for us, we got her trained up as a digital champion through Connecting Scotland. We tapped into a bit of funding. Samantha got paid. And she ran this whole digital side of the business for us. And we tapped into tablets and laptops and Wi-Fi, because the biggest thing as well, you would not believe how many people don't have access to Wi-Fi during when the lockdown came, because people, the reality is that there's lots of places when society's open that people can go and use Wi-Fi.
You've got like the libraries and that, you've got like internet cafes and stuff
centres
like that. You know, if you went to a subway Wi-Fi, Greg's Wi-Fi, you're fucking everywhere. But as you say, if it's shut
down. So we tapped into that. It was Connecting Scotland, Scottish Government, got to be honest, they've done well, and Govan Housing through Govan funding as well. We get about 10 grand's worth actually. And we gave away these tablets, we gave away laptops, gave away Wi-Fi, helping people. So we run, it's called a digital lending library, although to be honest with you, we've gave most of it out and we don't get most of it back.
Oh, I see.
Listen, look, that's life.
That's just part and parcel of the trade,
of
man.
So
it's like any library.
So but during this whole time, all the other employability companies had shut down, right? But we were still there. We were still working.
Still engaging.
Still engaging, right? And then when we came out of lockdown last year, I then had a wee deal with the housing that I'd take the hub on, and we do one-to-one support. So that was kind of like, you know, fully masked and all that COVID compliance stuff. But people needed people needed a base to come in to do for jobs, to do whatever. So it's kind of been a whole culture shift as well in order about how we do that as well. But we're still busy, you know, we still, you know, it went from supporting 30, 40 people a week down to about 5 to 6 to 7 people a week, you know. But out of those 5 to 6 to 7 people that we're supporting, through the course of the support, we were offering or giving or signposting or helping, you know, most of them were getting into work, you know.
So you're still producing the
Still
results for the
doing it.
people
I mean,
that are still able to speak into.
So like the 2 years, can I always take it the last 2 years we've supported 200 people into work, roughly about 100 the first year and roughly 100 this year. But out of the 200 that were supported into work, 78% are still working.
Oh really? Brilliant, man.
Which is I mean, but it's like even guys like I'll use his name, Jason. You won't mind. Jason, you know, we've supported Jason in about 6 different jobs over the last 2 years, you know, because the other side of what we do is like, Jason's a great guy, but he finds it difficult to hold down a job, right? You know,
It's quite a lot of people feel like that. No, I mean,
that's just the way it is, and so that's not for me to judge him, right? So we get him into a job, and he'll last, and then he'll turn back up at the door, right? Or he'll phone me, or he'll message me, and you only get that judgment of why the fuck have you gave that up, right? Or what you doing? It's like no bother. Come on in.
If you're right back to a sanction, son, that kind of shit you get at the job centre and that.
Sit down. Let's what we're going to do? Right? Okay, well, let's do this. Let's do that. And that's the other point about it is we don't deal with benefits. We don't deal with this. So we're non-judgmental. You know, it really is. It really has to be that.
It's hard
service.
to come by for special employability places, man. It's a really big missing aspect of these places.
But that's how we get people back, and that's the whole consistency about how you support people. Is that in life, like, you know, I'm not going to preach as if I know whatever, but in life you fall over, right? You know, we all fall over.
To the besties.
We all fall over. How do we get back up? And most of the time when you get back up, it's like, if you've got somebody there, it's easier to get back up sometimes, right? Now, employability is no different, right? And I'm not putting us in that kind of level of support services and what it is. But what I know about employability is that if people know that they come back through our doors and they're not going to get what's happened, why's that happened, don't care about that. You're not interested in it. Come on back in and we'll just help you find another job.
We'll take it back for the start again, that thing as well, because it goes back to that kind of trust issue as well. Is that for the talks that if somebody gets a job for the job centre and they lost it for a reason, they don't want to come back and say, a lot of people, it destroys their confidence and they get back in, so you get berated and fucking attacked by somebody or something like that. It destroys your confidence and you're like, fuck shit, see if I try to get back into another job, go for interviews and
I mean, like the amount of guys I've worked with that have got into work, but then the work's found out they've got a conviction and they'll lose their job, you know, stuff like that. So I sit with guys sometimes, you know, there's a lot of guys I sit with and go, well, why did you start that job? Without, you know, going, let's talk about this for a second, right? Well, I took that job because I needed money, right? Okay, that's great. So let's try and find you something where we can get you started that you're going to stay in. That having the convictions is not going to be that problem, or it might take you a bit longer to get into something like that, but what's not going to happen is you're not going to start work and then within 6 or 7 weeks or 2 months or 3 months you're going to fall over again. Because what happens when you fall over, especially when you're putting yourself through that sometimes, you know. Now we can't help everybody like that, but I have those open conversations with people.
Straight up with people, know what I mean, get on their level.
Just talking to say, look, you know, I know how difficult it is for that because I've been there, you know. And that's not a prison thing, that's just a barrier thing. How do you deal with barriers, you know? So because I've been able to deal with mine a lot better, I try and talk to people a wee bit better. Don't get me wrong, I get guys that will walk in and go, all right, you're the guy that can help me get a job because you've been to prison. And I'm like, well,
in a nutshell, for God's sake.
Well, sit down, let's have a talk, right? And then I start talking, and then he's like, well, where's my job? And I'm like, mate, what the fuck were you talking
As if
about?
you're just holding them out like
Wait,
fucking cookies.
He's like, well, no, well, that's how I can't work because of guys like you. And it's like, mate, fuck off. You know what I mean?
I
you know?
just get cunts like that,
And
didn't you,
I
man?
get
You're
it.
like, one of you fucking no get a job, you're fucking idiot.
You know, but it's not many people I've spoken to like that. But aye, that's what happens.
You do get them, as you say,
You
man.
know.
You get your 90% arseholes and your 10% good
You know,
cunts, as you say, same everywhere.
But even on the flip side, I always have conversations with guys that walk in, you know, because the job centre, that's the other side. The job centre send me people all the time.
So do you work with the job centre as well then?
It's kind of, it's one of those, they're part of that partnership thing, but they're also, I'm no naive and I'm no stupid enough because everybody that comes to me goes to the job centre because they're unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's better to work with people than to work against people. You know what I mean? I know how difficult their job is, but I know how they could do their job a lot more better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's why unlock employment wouldn't be here if the job centres were doing their job properly, right? But that's an oversimplification sometimes because that's not how the way society works, and that's not the way the job centres are set up. But you know, there's a lot of good people working in the job centres, and I've seen since COVID they've took on so many more people that actually engage with me better than what a lot of the old time job centre people do. Because there's a lot of people that still resent what I do within employability.
Well, is it right? Do you feel that?
Oh Jesus! Oh my God! You wouldn't believe it. You would not believe.
What part of it is it? Do you feel the resent? The fact you've been in the jail, or the fact you work with people that's
Well,
been in the jail?
I always put it down to just the fact that we get people into work.
Or that you're
Right.
actually making a difference. It's almost like a jealousy aspect or
I
something
have,
like that.
I have that conversation with people so many times when I get talking to people within employability, and I'll say, "Oh, well, how many jobs have you supported this month? You know, within your, oh, well, I don't know," and I'm like, "No, you do know, but you're not willing to tell me, right? Because I'm going to tell you that I get 10 or 12 or 13, and that's just me, or just me and Sam, or me and whatever, and it's like, well, what's your sustainability? So you know how sustainability is like how many people are still working or still in work, right? Now the national average, and I'll go into stuff like this, like through employability companies who are paid millions, right, is like 25 to 30%. So 30% of everybody they get into work after 12 months is still working. That's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous, right? With me, it's 75%. Right now, I know we're smaller. We work with, you know, we do work with as many people, but that's the way I always look at it. Is like, why shouldn't it be 60 to 70%?
If you can date you and another person, if you're in back,
Yeah,
and these big companies
and
not
that,
getting funding,
how can you not do that? How can you not be working? How can your thought process not be to be working like that to do that? Because all it comes down to is your work coaches, your employment consultants, how you work with people, how you treat people, how you get them into a job that's suitable for them, or when they fall out of work, you're the first person to contact to get them back into work, you know? And that for me is like, that's what I'm saying. I love my job. I love everything about what I do. But not just because you're helping people like that, but it's just, I think it's just the best job ever, you know what I mean? But I'm lucky that after prison, I went through some shitty jobs, but I loved. But then I found something that I just find a just complete and utter passion in.
It's meaningful.
It's just and it is, and it's like I've never been that kind of, you know, helpful person or that volunteer. I've never been anybody like that. But I suppose I've kind of found that thing within life that you've been through that cycle. And everybody goes, "Oh, it's because you've been to prison." Eventually, you just go, "Yeah, it is, yeah." Whatever. That makes it easier for you.
You should never argue with fools because people for a distance want to be able to tell who's who.
No, it's kind of like that. But I mean, I've been blessed as well. I don't want to use what's that, but I mean, like, so there's organisations in Glasgow like Cisco.
Cisco, they've just only been a bit active for a year. I know a boy, he takes part in Cisco, man. They're doing quite well. I think they've just managed to turn themselves into a charity.
They have indeed. So Natalie, who runs it, I met Natalie. I'm lucky. I've met a lot of good people since I've been back in Glasgow, right? And like James Dockett, who I spoke about there. Natalie's another. And Natalie runs Cisco. And I met, and she's like, I hear another funny story. Right, so
talk away.
Just a quick one. So she runs a recovery cafe in Berlin.
Right.
Supporting guys. And she got in touch with me through Twitter and she went, "Oh, I love what you're doing. you've been inside, do you want to come and speak to a couple of the boys that I know that you could support? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. She went, right, I'll meet you in Berlin next week, and you can come and speak to some guys, right? Now, I'm pretty naive sometimes, right, just in general, right? So I'm getting up to Berlin, I'm sitting in the bus, never been there, getting off the bus stop, and I seen the cafe. There's this cafe outside Berlin, and I walks in, I went, oh, you're the recovery cafe? She went, no, we're just like this community cafe or whatever, right? And I'm like, I ain't bother. So walks up and the phone's that, and I said, where are you? She went over the main entrance. So I'm walking up the main entrance to Berlin, and then she said, oh, there you go. So I first I met her, she gave me a big cuddle just before COVID broke down, right? And David's there with one of the guys, and she went, right, are you ready? And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. Now, I've never been in Berlin before, right, or been in anywhere, right? So next minute she goes, right, this way, and there's a sign that says staff, and the door opens, and I'm like, where the fuck are we going? So I've got my backpack, just my bag there, and my laptop in it and whatever. And as we walk through, there's metal detectors, right? It's like like through airport checkout. And she's like, right, we need to get your badge printed. Right, and I'm going, Natalie, badge for what? And she went, well, we're getting into the prison. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, but at this point we're in the queue, but it's all screws officers that are behind me and in front of me and Natalie, so they're all moving through. So I went, right, took my jacket and put my bag in. And she went, don't worry, we'll sort it in a minute, right? So next minute, my bag goes through the thingies and the alarm starts flashing. No like thing, it goes like that, right? Sake. And I'm like, and Natalie looks at me and she went, what have you got in your bag? And I went, my laptop. And she went, where's, and then next minute I pulled out my mobile phone, right? So I'm walking into prison with this mobile, right? And the screws just went, get him out of here, get him. Right, honestly. So anyway,
scumbags.
She went. So we got everything together. And we go outside and she went, what the fuck are you doing? And I went, what the fuck are you doing? I went, where's this recovery cafe? And she went, in the prison. I thought, no, I thought this was for guys that had got out of prison and it was a recovery. So she's taking me inside thinking I'd already done all this before.
Oh, right.
And I'm like, I've never been in a prison since the day I left. I said, this is what, and you took me in the staff entranceway, you know. So we had to get a locker and put everything in. And we walked back in and they went, he's not getting in. Like that. So they had to get the officer down in order to get me signed in. And I got my picture taken. But sure enough, I've got a staff badge that says Berlin on it, right? And honest to Christ, I mean, I've had this conversation with Natalie. We went in Berlin and it was mental. I'm walking through with two officers and Natalie, and I've got this badge around my neck, right? And I know it was 10 years ago, but you're walking through prison and you're like, you're on the other side now. Mm-hmm. And I'm walking in and it was just the weirdest thing. And I eventually, when we get into the classroom, because I had to take my badge off. I couldn't wear it anymore because all the boys were coming in and they're looking at you straight away.
Aye. And
they're just like, who's that dick? Right? And I just was like, I need to take his badge off, Natalie. But they all knew Natalie. They all knew David. They all knew.
They felt that we trust with him, but you're
laughing at this. So then we sat in this big circle and everybody was introducing, and it was something I'd never been involved with prison, right? And basically what it was like guys that were going through recovery but were getting out. So the reason I was there was to go, this is what I do and I want to help you when you come out, you know, because it was like me going back to the bare common denominator of everything about what I want to do, which is to support guys when they come out of prison, to try and get them into work, to stop them coming back in, right? Mm-hmm. And Natalie afforded me this brilliant opportunity to do that, right? Because everybody whenever think about ex-offenders and employment, they always think, oh, do you work with Berlin or do you work with shots? And I'm like, no, there's about 2,000, 3,000 guys in the streets that have been in prison. I don't need to go to prison to get guys. We're all out here, so I've got enough. But anyway, all the way around to me, and everybody's looking at me, and I introduced myself and I told my wee story, and all of a sudden, guys were like, "Wow, this is mental." So you've been? I went, yeah, I've done, you know, Birmingham, you know, Lay Hill and Blakey, and I says in New York, get my own company and I help people into work and whatever. Anyway, 3 of the boys that went through that came out and came to me, and I
You got in touch
supported
with
them. Yeah, supported them. Never getting them into work yet, but we're still supporting them. You know?
so it's still ongoing then?
Oh yes, yeah, still. And but Natalie and that do is just phenomenal. What they do, what she does, she's a different level of support. But that's all that addiction recovery side of it. That I see in Glasgow a lot. I see so many positive stuff going on, and I know I've seen some of the stuff that you have covered as well. But it's phenomenal that the approach and the way they do it. But like, you know, Natalie's got her own story about why she does what she's doing. I'll get my story, and all the people that I see that work within that side of it, I've all got good positive stories, you know, that they've came through all that.
Now, he's came from a dark background, just like yourself, not I mean, done time in prison, where it could have looked like, as you say, when you got out of jail, you didn't know how to deal with it, you were hit rock bottom, not I mean, it just shows a lot of people have probably feel been in that same position. See, like you said, the first time you got out of jail and you started drinking, just to cope with it, then you were back in. I think there might be people stuck in that cycle, know what I mean?
It's yeah, I mean, even like, it's the darker side of prison that I never ever dealt with, or never wanted to deal with, when you look at all the addiction stuff that you see in prison. And we spoke about it earlier a wee bit, but it's the positive way that I see the way some people in Glasgow deal with it. You know, these the organisations that are all there, you know, like talking about addiction recovery and no talking about people as junkies.
Aye.
See stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it's labelling people.
It's a complete and utter mind shift and changing, and about how do we help people that is like, I mean, I remember sitting with, you know, we've all got families that have all people that have got addictions and stuff like that. My mum, she died with addiction problems, you know what I mean? And it's kind of, it makes you face up to stuff that you don't really want to face, or you don't want to deal with.
Taboo subject.
The potentially that you do. Me and my brothers have spoken about this, and but the way I look at, I mean, I see it, the positive side of it. You know, like we were talking about Helen at Sunny Govan on the radio. You know, she does that, the addiction recovery stuff, talking openly about it and stuff like that. I've got so much respect and admiration for people like that. Is that it's easy for me to talk about mine. I can put a wee funny story in about my background and about what it is, and people go, he's a good guy, you know, that's great, he's doing that. But then when you see people that have went through that recovery process actually talking about it, and you know that there's somebody out there listening that's going, all right, so there is people that, you know, that understand, that know they can do and do that. That for me is at a different level to any of the shit that I do, you know what I mean? You know, it's so they're I'm very privileged that I've met a lot of these good people that's out there. There's a guy that runs a homeless clothing. You heard the Blank Faces?
Blank Faces, no,
it's a clothing organisation. Whenever we look at them, Jared, he runs that. I was going to call him Jared Butler there.
I know, obviously I heard it coming out and then you caught yourself there, man.
He runs a clothing. They've actually got a shop in Great Western Road now, but he's been doing it for years. And his background, and he runs a clothing range, and the clothing range is actually designed by people that are homeless.
Oh really? Is it?
Aye, and all his profits go back into the homeless, right? And he works with the Invisibles, another homeless charity unit within Glasgow, and they do that. So that's another. So that I meet lots of people that have all got their own passion about why they do it. So he's got his own story about homelessness and about why he's doing it.
Right, so he's probably had some kind of experience in the past.
100%. But he grew up. I think he worked for Diesel. He went to Italy. He was a fashion designer.
Oh, I see.
So he then came back to Glasgow and thought, right, let me start my own label, but it needs to have a vision and value, and I went. But that's what I did when I came back to Glasgow. I wanted to start an employability company with my own vision and value. So Natalie was the same, you know, and then Paul McAlinden, who runs the Glasgow Barons in Govan.
Paul McAlinden, he stays in my street. He's got a house in my street, because he done the thing with Steg G, didn't he?
That's it. So he's
is he like part of like an orchestra or some kind of...
He runs the Glasgow Barons, but then it's the... he's got the refugee side of it as well. Musicians in Exile, they're called, and that was massive, and it still is massive. So I meet people like that, and he ran the Syrian, was it the Iraqi or the Iraqi orchestra during the war?
Oh really?
Oh yeah, he wrote a book and all that. He's
Seems quite an interesting guy. I'd like to get in touch with him. I hear he's not in the country much, or he's
no, he's thinking. I'll pass you on his details. Paul was supposed to meet him for lunch yesterday, but then Govan had Power cut.
Oh, I was in fucking home bargains, man, and this is when I know I changed guy, because I was in my house painting.
Yeah.
I was like, right, I'll jump down and get a roller and a brush and pan. And I went to home bargains, I picked up and I walked up to the till, and there's a power cut.
Power
The
cut,
lap when
yeah.
evacuating, and me, I just put it back in the shelf and walked out. And then somebody was like, how do you know just walk out
Walk
with it? And
out
I'm
with
like, ah, fucking hell, man. And I was kind of kicking myself, and I was like, that's when I know my change guy. But I was pandemonium, you're walking along. Fucking
But I was
government.
waiting Paul for lunch and then that'll happen. But like I said, there's like, and it's, I think it's just because of what I do, because I never thought about it when I come back to Glasgow and this employability thing. All of a sudden, you're working in this third sector, which when I was in England, I was still working in the third sector. It was all commercial aspect of.
So what's define third sector?
So third sector is really all that charity-based side,
Right.
Okay, so it's kind of, and I never ever thought I'd ever be involved in that. But in Scotland, we employability, that's what it's labelled as. Whereas in England, it's more big companies that run it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then again, what I do, there's nobody else doing what I'm doing
Right.
on this. There is other organisations running, but so then I had to kind of set up this kind of like community interest company, and it was never a route I really was comfortable going down, and it was, and even now I've made some, my accounts are all getting processed just now and stuff like that. So you need to become a businessman as well because you're running a company and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
But then all of a sudden you're involved with all these charity sector people and stuff like that, and it's like, a lot of it's all that holistic side, and just whatever. I've not got time for it.
A lot of fucking mumbo jumbo jargon, that business
there's
jargon.
There's a lot of great stuff that's going on, but it's it is what it is. But then you meet good guys and good girls like
Your 10%.
Natalie's and your Gerards and your Pauls and your Steg G's at Sonny Govan and Make Do and Growing. So there's lots of great phenomenal organisations, and Magpie's Nest is another one. There's some great people that all run that, But then there's loads of organisations that are just taking money for fuck all,
Mm-hmm.
which I see, not just in Govan, I think across the board. And I think the third sector is, I know a lot of money's been cut to it, but there's a lot of organisations out there that are just getting money for nothing. Money that they got during the lockdown and shut their doors. The third sector organisations designed and supposed to be there to help communities and people that are in need, that are struggling. Where more are you going to struggle than during a fucking pandemic? You know what I mean?
I know.
And people shut their doors.
It's always the same, innit?
and
The rich get richer, the poor get poorer.
Yeah, and we're going to supply digital. Everybody's going digital, and I'm like, well, need to get Wi-Fi. Need to get. Oh, we'll give everybody tablets, and it's like, you just don't get it. You're just not. You're just not.
Not living in the
Yeah,
world.
but I try and stay away from that whole critique side of it as well, because it's easy to critique. It's easy to criticise, but but when you're involved in it, sometimes I can't keep my mouth shut.
Oh, definitely, especially when you're passionate about it and you're looking as well, because obviously it must be hard running it at certainly charities and community interest companies. No, I mean it's hard as well.
It's just like running a business. You know what I mean?
Just seeing other companies where there's one, they're not doing, as you say, goes back to they're not bringing in the numbers, whereas you are, but they're getting the funding, you're not.
They're getting the funding, but then I also need to look and go, well, I need to be more business orientated. I need to be more ruthless. I need to be more whatever and whatever.
You think your tact kind of thing.
Do you kind of? But then I'm very much of the, I don't know. I'll have to see. I'm involved with a kind of consortium of a bit of employability that's going in with a couple of other companies for some funding that might secure me. I've got some other ideas as well. I'm potentially going to start doing some training, because I used to run training in Birmingham. It was a training centres as well. So I'm looking to potentially go into that, and that's a revenue generator.
What kind of training?
Employability to start with, so you can go.
Would you be training people to do the kind of job you're doing now?
No, so it would just be like employability skills, right? Which kind of is what I call vanilla training. But the idea would be that, so you would teach people about CVs and whatever. It's basically what I do, but they get a certificate at the end of it.
Oh, I see,
right?
man.
But you get paid to do that, right? I give it all free, but I would get paid to do it because it was an accredited training.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other trainings. I used to run forklift truck training centres in Birmingham as part of the employability side. I'm looking at that. So the idea is to kind of potentially branch into training side, right, to support people into work, make money, and then that would allow me to then run the job club's free as a point of entry and employ people to work within it. At the moment I'm doing it all, but I want to employ people to run it so that it's free to anybody, which it is free to anybody to walk into. But you know, I've got aspirations, and how far I'm going to push it or how far it's going to go, I don't know. So like, you know, we're in Govan, but I want a centre in Poso, I want a centre in Easterhouse, I want one in Drumchapel, Castlemilk. I want to go into more communities and work. You know what I mean? You know, because we can support more people that way. We can support, there's people there that just need a little bit of work. I mean, a lot of the work that we do, you know, people talk, we say, what do you do? And they say, well, it's like, we'll sit and do a CV. I've got a boy coming in tomorrow and say, we put an hour and I'll sit with you and I'll do a CV for you. But I need to sit with you, and we bounce off each other and we create the CV. Whereas you can go on a course for 4 weeks to write a CV, and I'm like, well, why don't you just spend 2 hours of that and just write a CV for somebody? Because then as soon as he's got his CV, he can go and job search. You know what I mean?
Aye.
I don't need to teach somebody how to read a fucking CV, write a CV, you know. We just need to give people CVs, but sit there with somebody and write it and do it.
Nah, you get a much better feel for what to put in it, because there's a lot of part of a CV you kind of need to sum up yourself, you know what I mean, and how to make yourself attractive to employers.
I mean, like last week, so there was a young boy, again, a mother referred him, sat him down, done his CV, right, went on Indeed, right, let's get your CV uploaded, right, get your mobile phone, download your Indeed job site. So within an hour and a half, he had a CV, he was on a job site, and he was job searching. You know what I mean? And that was within an hour and a half. So he was going home job searching. He was messaging me. He's coming in to see me on Monday. He's found 3 jobs that he needs a lot more work to help and support to do it. So it's kind of like, it's just, all we're doing is giving people a step up, as opposed to this whole big massive journey that we take people on for employment support. But everybody that walks through the door needs different help.
You just need to kind of identify, like, kind of, as you say, their barriers and that kind of stuff, and work on kind of
work
on the person
what they're
themselves.
doing. So it's kind of, some people, I mean, I always say success for us is when we don't see anybody again, you know.
Aye, that's the best thing can come out, innit, man?
That's it. Or if they fall out of work, we're one of the first port of calls that they come back to.
Aye,
you know
that's
what
plus
I
and
mean,
all builds up like a personal relationship. So I'm sure everybody that comes in that does work with you, they build a kind of personal relationship. You know what I mean? They come back. It's
Well,
like
the biggest thing that I look at success just now, personally, is the fact of how many parents bring kids in now. You know, that's just word of mouth. That's just.
Was that always the case?
No.
So it was never. Is this just a kind of new thing?
This is a new thing. It's kind of happened, and it's taken. It's like, look, you know, it's hard enough to reach out to the kids in Govan as it is, right? Okay, just to get youngsters coming in, but I've got a good core of youngsters that we try and support, and there's word of mouth, you know. I mean, I've got one kid that's trying to get his dad in to me, you know, because I supported him into work, right? And he's trying to get his dad, you know, and he's kind of, you know, we've spoke quite a few times, and that for me that's success for me. That's what I count as success, you know. But he's trying to get his dad in.
It's like a ripple effect kind of thing.
You know what I mean? You know, but yeah, but what's but the whole thing about the parent side of it is that I know that's word of mouth. That's just parents talking to parents.
Right.
You know, mothers, dads talking to whatever. That boy Jerry down there does the job stuff. He's done a great job. You know, whatever. And so that's that good, but that's that for me is that positive bit about what we do. But that's all about reputation, isn't it? It's all about people trusting you within your local community as well, you know, and just word of mouth getting out there, you know. It's just, yeah, that's the biggest thing, you know what I mean? You know, just it's, you know, there's never a short. People always say about, oh, you must struggle with referrals. You never struggle with referrals because there's always people that are unemployed, you know, and it's about how do you tap into those to get people to walk through your door, you know. I always remember at the beginning somebody said to me, "Oh, you've got the hardest job ever," and I went, "No, I've got the easiest job. The hardest job is that person walking through my door."
It's for them.
You know,
it does take a lot, doesn't it, man? Especially with somebody that don't know that kind of thing. Unless it's been, let's see if it's a job centre point, right? I need to go, or I'm gonna get sanctioned with this. It's kind of you need to kind of make your own steps in. You know what I mean?
I always remember the guy that came in like last year, it was about 18 months ago, and he was like 40 odd, worked all his life, and he was at the job centre for like 3 months, and he was and then somebody told him about what I do, so he kind of come down, shut the door, came in, and within half an hour he was greeting in my office. He broke down because he was like, he went, I've been at he worked all his life, right? He was found redundant, he was was made redundant, and he was trying to get back into work, and he just could not get the job centre to give him any help. But it wasn't in a negative way for the job centre way. It was just he was just a number going through what he was doing. And literally, like I said, within half an hour, I'd done his CV, done this, done that, and he'd apply for jobs, and he was like, I just can't believe that that sort of help's out there. But there is lots of help out there, but people just don't know where to go and look for it. You know what I mean?
It should be advertised a lot more than what it is now. I mean, there should be people screaming for the rooftops about it.
I think there's a lot of that. You need to tick certain boxes before you can go to certain organisations, And I don't, because we're not funded like that at all. And now my funding's run out, so I'll be going back to that free service. I'll not be getting paid, but it means I'll be able to see I'll still see just as many people walking through my door until I can get some more money in to support me. But that's the basic core value of everything that I believe in. It just should be we should treat people like
like people.
But people,
treat people like people.
Like people, and be straight with people. And it's like you're not ready. You're not ready because come back in a month or whatever. I'm not going to tell anybody. It's not. This is between us. You know what I mean? And it could be down to their attitude, or it could just be down to that they're just not ready to find something or whatever. We get that a lot. We don't get it a lot, but it's always about the people that come back. You always know the people that come back are the ones that have went right. Okay, no, I'm ready. And I talk about employment like that with a lot of people as if it's like, that support service, but it is. It's embarrassing. People get embarrassed coming in asking for help. Many people that are help that can't write, that can't read.
It's a big confidence thing, not I mean, the day they feel, but especially people seen their older years, like their 40s and that kind of thing.
And job applications, and it's like, look, don't worry. The biggest thing obviously is we need to use your words, and I'll pretty it up, right? And that's what we do. So, and then some people still can't get, it's fine, no problem. Right, I'll sit with you, and I'll type it, but it needs to bounce off of you, so that when you go for the job interview, that's your words that are coming off that application. But all I've done there is type it or write it. You know what I mean?
It's a simple thing, really, isn't it, man? You're just having somebody talking to you, and you're just typing it down for them, and it does a lot.
And that's the support. That's what I always call the lowest common denominator, and that's what that is. It's not like we're supporting people in a mental health or a massive big thing. It's just that little bit of, but that's the confidence bit that people feel scared to go in and ask. People feel scared to go. They don't know how to job search, they don't know how to use computers, or they don't know how to use a tablet, or they'll use a tablet and then you need to do something, and then oh shit, and then it's like, and that's what I always say, that's what stops people getting into work.
It's all back to that fear of being judged, isn't it?
100%. And that's what it is. It's that, that's the biggest thing I think that I like to think that we offer. Like, always, like we say, everybody judges people no matter what they say, but when it's employability, you need to kind of not have that. You need to really, you need to go, especially when you're talking about people coming in and saying, well, I don't want this, I don't want that, and I don't want that, I want that. And it's like, all right, but right, I could help you into any of these areas and you'll be earning money. I don't fucking want a job like that. It's like, right, I know, and I'm not here to tell you what to do, and that's another thing that we don't do. We don't tell people what to do with their jobs and stuff like that. But it's like, I always accentuate the whole make money. If you're earning more money than you're on the dole and you're able to pay your rent, you still get £500, £600 a month in your pocket after you've paid everything, then that's better than what you're doing in it, And then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's breaking it down for them and kind of so they can look at it from a different perspective.
I didn't think about it like that, or well actually, and it's like, you can clear $1,600 a month. What? And it's like, that's the money you're talking about now. When you're talking about 20 grand or whatever, £10 an hour now seems to be quite a decent average that a lot of people are earning.
It's just went up to actually kind of average wage. See, if you're labourers and that kind of stuff. When I started labouring, it was £6.50.
And it's like, and even now with a lot of Glasgow businesses seem to be doing that living wage, and there's a lot seem to be doing that. So when you talk to people a bit more about stuff like that, I don't go near minimum contracts, but it's not my job to tell people what not to do and what to do, you know.
Just give them information and let them fucking
Let
make
them
their own
decide,
mind up.
you know.
Maybe obviously highlight the pros and cons and that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's no,
I mean,
not there to kind of tell people what to do.
When people want to take digs at me, that's what they do. And I get a lot of people, you know, especially in social media, you wouldn't believe the abuse sometimes that you take, and it's like, well, do you put people into things? And I go, I don't put people into anything. I don't. We support people to move into whatever their choices are. Aye, but you must look. No, that's not what we do. Well, do you tell them to do free trials? It's like, no, that's not what we do.
Go, I can get you internet trolls a job because you've got fuck all
most
better
of the
to do.
time, I just say, look, I always say, I mean, I said to a boy the other week there, listen, this is where I work. Is the address in Gov? Come on down and talk to me, right? You know, you're passionate about abusing me. Come on down and have a chat with me, have a coffee. And if you're not working, I'll help you into a job, right? And then it's like, fuck, I've got a job, I don't need your help. and actually, the guy come back said that the other day, and then he disappeared. But you get that all the time, you know, and especially because, like, I've got a bit of political support because my MPs back me because it's employment, right? You know, that's, you know, so if Humza tweets out something, or Chris Stevens, because they're my two local MPs, they'll just get a barrage of abuse. You know what I mean? You know, some of it's funny. You know what I mean? You know. And actually, I've got a lot of time for Humza, but besides that. But yeah, but it's wild. It's wild the abuse that you even take, even for employability.
Fucking get abuse for anything, man. You could save the world, man. You'd get abuse for it, know what I mean? It's just cunts want something to hate because it's like, you've got it now, it's right in front of you, man. See, before you could fucking, you're not really aware of the world, but you're getting shit put in your face every day, and it's, see, you're having a shite day, or you've got a job you hate, but rather than fucking go and get a better job, you want something to be raging at, and then you say, oh wait, I can be raging at that annoys me, so that's why I'm raging, but it's no, they're actually raging in their own circumstance.
It's mental, the stuff. I mean, somebody even put up my company house accounts because they were overdue, because during the pandemic, saying, you getting public money and this, and I'm like, mate, I'm not getting a penny off the public money like that. I'm actually being funded completely different for organisations. I have to take a penny off the public purse to that. And it's like, so you get people just judging, and I'm like, have you even looked at my website, or have you looked at Twitter? Have you seen
people have a good scandal? That's what it is.
Have you seen how much we help, or you know? But
I'm not interested. Not interested.
But then I can't go down that line as well of going, what are you doing?
You start biting to it. That's when you just start falling into it. It ends up it's a fucking never-ending argument. And it's these cunts. They've got all the time in the world. Time isn't a thing to them.
No, it's not. And it's like all the faceless accounts, you know what I mean?
It is. It's fake accounts, man. Fucking fake names, you know. I get it all the time, I know, but I just laugh it off, you know what I mean? You need to laugh it off your day.
I used to get it more when I was first setting up and I was pushing social media. But I do get it the odd time. But that's just the other side of it, where you do sit back and go, what's going on?
Well, I'm doing a good thing here. What's the fucking?
I feel like sometimes, do you know what we're doing? Do you know do you know what we're doing? But you can't. It's no like you can't have that mindset.
Aye.
But you do see people going. They've just got their own wee angle, and they just want to knock you off your pedestal.
That's exactly it, man. People, as it goes back to people wanting to see people doing well or doing better for themselves. You've came fair off background that kind of thing.
I started doing some criminal justice stuff, and I was on STV News last year or the beginning of this year talking about the rehabilitation of offenders, and an organisation that asked me, Release Scotland. I'm involved with this organisation, I'm on the board, and it's to help companies employ more ex-offenders, and it's to give them more information and stuff like that. So I'm there and I support some. So I was on TV talking a wee bit about that. Jesus Christ, man, the abuse that I was getting about he shouldn't be doing this. He's been to prison, you know. Or it was like, well, all right, okay, so we see what you're doing, but you shouldn't be doing this because you know you stole all this money, you know. And I'm like, geez, that was 10 years ago, you know. I've done my time,
don't forget.
done whatever, and then they've done a Google search, you know. And then it's like,
they've hit the jackpot. They've hit the jackpot when the Googles. You go, right, who's this Jerry KEOGH? He was in the jail, big fucking hard-on erection, man.
It's just
pure ejaculating in their pants, man, typing this, that. I could just imagine it, man.
You get all of that, and it's like, it's mental. And the thing is, as well, I never, like, when I left prison and up to unlock employment was like 10 years of my life where I wasn't involved in any of that. You know what I mean? I wasn't involved in all that side of it, but now I'm. And now you're fair game, as they say, you know what I mean?
That's it, man. You're fucking easy picket, especially when you're helping cunts, man. That's the target. Know what I mean? It's not the bad bastards, it's the
no.
cunts that are doing well. It's that's the fucking get the bastards.
And then when I don't care what anybody says, unlock employment are better at anybody and helping people into work, and I'm proud of what we do.
The figures prove it, man.
And that's what it is, and you start shouting about those kind of figures sometimes. There's people out there that just want to knock you down, you know what I mean?
People don't like confident people, man, especially when they're not confident themselves.
So there's
back to that confidence thing, man, but to bring them in the office and get their confidence up, help them out, help them write a CV.
Yeah,
see, they're writing a fucking tweet.
And even like talking, just because I'm pretty, I'm pretty confident about how I talk about certain stuff, because I always try and use it in a positive. And it's, and sometimes when you put funny stories in, even talking about prison or just life and doing whatever, it's like, you shouldn't be laughing about that, you shouldn't be talking about it like that. And it's like, well, no, we should be, because I'll tell you how shit it was as well. I'll tell you how bad it was. I'll tell you how, the other sides of it as well. But there's, you've got to be realistic about life, you know what I mean? And about that it doesn't crush you, it doesn't break you, because it does break you, and I've seen it break guys, and I've seen it break girls, especially women in prison and stuff like that. That's the amount of women that go in and out of jails and stuff like that, and that's mostly addictions and stuff like that. It's fucking horrendous, and that's and again, it's like that's the whole concept with the unlock side of it as well, is that we try to get out and help as many people as possible.
You're breaking that cycle, know what I mean? Because it's like you look at before, like when you get to jail, you're lucky enough to find yourself employment. You seem like kind of guy who can find yourself employment quite quickly, because obviously you get the skills. But a lot of people, they find themselves, they go to jail, they've got no money, they've lost everything in hostels and shit, and then nobody's want to give them a job because, as you say, criminal record. So how can they make money? Steal, life of crime. Then if they get addictions, they're funding that habit, and boom, they're back in. Then it's just a cycle.
It's only now that people are kind of talking about that angle of it, and I've always stayed away from that, but now I'm finding myself involved in it. I'm involved in an agency called the New Leaf Network. It's kind of based in Birmingham, and it's a kind of collective of guys and girls that have all been to prison, but have all done well, no well business-wise, but just done well personally, or just like getting into work and doing whatever. And there's so it's like ex-offenders that support ex-offenders professionally and business-wise, and we've got we're actually applying for funding down in England in order to support the probation system to help guys and girls when they get out of prison as well. That would never have happened 10 years ago. Ex-offenders applying for funding to help guys coming out of prison, you know what I mean?
It would just fucking seem like a pure pipe dream back then.
It would be, aye. So, I mean, I'm only a very tiny part of it. Marie Claire, who runs it in Birmingham, she's done time. She got out, got herself educated, got a degree, and she set up this initiative to help people in prison coming out and going into prison, helping people, which a lot of people do now. And so I kind of get involved with stuff like that, because I kind of see where my employability side comes in, that I can help people that way as well, So I kind of try and get involved with stuff like that. And that just seems to be where life seems to be leading me at the moment, you know what I mean? On that side of what we're doing. But yeah, it's mental, mate. You know what I mean? Life's crazy.
Weird how life works. So if you think back to when you were a postman, obviously working the Royal Mail, then in the jail, was you ever thought you'd have ended up in this position right now?
No.
And it's weird, but if you look back, because at the time, I always say it about when I done it, and because I ended up in the jail, I learned the guitar in the jail.
Yeah.
The guitar I stole at the jail.
Right, there we go.
For that Ostend, I met these boys, they were obviously in a band, and I wouldn't have met them if I didn't play the guitar. If I started this podcast, I wouldn't have been doing my acting work. So that all stemmed off me at getting the jail and playing the guitar. And
that's the positive sides of everything. I mean, just talking about Royal Mail and guys, literally when I moved to Govan, and I bumped into a boy, Andy Coyle, one of my best mates now, and I'd worked with him for so many years in Royal Mail, and he was doing a DJ set in Sunny Govan. He was just a wee part-time thing he was doing, and we literally bumped into each other at Shaw Street, and he went, "I thought you were in prison." And I went, "Andy, that was 12 years ago. That was 10 years ago. What are you talking about?"
And you were life or death.
And he's like, "Oh, right, aye, was it? Aye. What you doing now?" And I went, "Well, I run this wee thing called Unlock Employment. What's all that about?" And then it turns out he left Royal Mail and he was doing Sunny G, and he's a forklift truck driver instructor now, actually. So and we've kind of connected, and we talk about it quite a lot, about all the shit that's happened in life and stuff like that. He says, and when I heard about you, he said it was it was mental. He says it was just mental when what you were doing. He says, but now look at it, and his life is trying. He never was involved in that, but the journey he's went through in life and stuff like that, and it's hi. But that's you always kind of try and talk about that. You surround yourself with good people, and that's and I during my life I've made conscious decisions to cut people in my life that were toxic and stuff like that.
You learn to kind of realise, no, as you get older, you can identify and that kind of stuff.
I'm nearly 50 now, so it's kind of, I'd like to think I'm making the right decisions now in life, you know what I mean, and that's, that's the biggest thing. I've got the support of my 2 ex-wives, which is phenomenal for me, and but they're proud of what I'm doing, and my kids, that's a different side. I'm doing a lot of what I'm doing as well, because I was a shit husband. I say that, but I always try to be a good dad, you know what I mean, and the fact I've got my 2 ex-wives still in my life to a point of they support me, that's that keeps me going.
That is brilliant, man, because you see a lot of people now get ex-wives and that, and they get wains and that kind of thing. It's quite messy. It ends up like that with a lot of people.
It's not been an easy journey, but it's like all of that. I mean, I speak to my boy KEOGH, bring him to Glasgow all the time, and he used to come into the hub all the time with us, and he literally, the last time he was down, he came up and he seen my name on my door, and he went, "Oh, you work here?" And I went, "What do you think I do?" And he went, "I thought you just came in and had cups of coffee."
Broke in and used our kettles.
What are you talking about? He says, "Well, you always come in and just sit down and have a cup of coffee." I said, "Yeah, but I'm helping." He says, "Oh, no, I see that." I said, "I don't know what you're doing." So, and then my daughter, she turns 21 next week as well, and my boy, he's 16. I think he finds it difficult having the whole concept that his dad was in prison and stuff like that. But they're all England. They live in Birmingham, you know what I mean. So and they've never experienced anything like that. So I think he's been up to Glasgow a few times. So doing stuff like this as well helps me to connect with my kids as well. That's
another positive to come for it.
Yeah, I try to, I mean, but I'm just as big a fuck up and prick as everybody else.
Fuck, we're all the same, man. We've all got a past, but it's one of the ones, as we say, it's like these experiences that shape you, the person you are. Because think of it this way: if you never went through the experiences, would you be the person you are today?
No.
It's like, no.
I mean, I always, I know I touched on it earlier, but I always say, look, I was always blessed that I walked into prison and came out the same person. You know what I mean? Mentally, and just life's dealt you other issues and blows and whatever, but you see the shit that goes on. I mean, even now when we speak to youngsters that go in and that are coming out and they think it's an easy ride and they think it's the rest of it, and it's like it's not, mate. You know what I mean? This isn't how it works. You'll end up battered in there, and if you're not battered in there, you need to survive it, pardon me, and then you need to go on with your life and the ramifications that comes on it afterwards. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm passionate about as well, is to help the youngsters no go in by trying getting them into apprenticeships and jobs, and then the ones that I work with social work with a couple of youngsters that are really on that edge of getting back inside. And the only reason two of them have not been back inside is because they're engaging with me to try to get a job, and that's went in the reports to the judge, kind of thing, So there's stuff like that I never thought I'd ever be involved in. That's never, but now because social work contact me.
You've actually involved in like the kind of before they've even went to jail kind of thing. You've started in that process now.
You're the ex-offender that runs an employability company. Can you help us? And it's like when social work come to you, it's like, yeah, of course I can. Of course I'd love to help you. Of course I'd love to help you. And it's like, can he pay you? It's like,
short as a surprise. Don't worry, mate. I'm used to it.
Don't worry about it. So there's that other flip side of where you don't think about stuff like that. Where I could probably expand that more in what I'm doing or what I want to do. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes. You know what I mean?
See where the future takes you. But first thing is try and get a bit of funding for yourself, then you can kind of expand.
If not, I'll do it for free.
You'll still be doing it anyway. It'll not stop you in your tracks. Know what I mean?
I'll get money anyway. I hate to say, I don't mean to be in a big head, but see, at the end of the day, I probably need to be a bit more business smart. definitely need to be aware. I mean, I'm nearly 50. People think you should be. And it's like, no, I've never dealt with shit like this before. in my life.
There's no fucking people who put, see, like, people who put age limitations on what you should be doing. That's just a society thing. That's only a recent thing in the history of mankind. See, like, fucking 500 years ago, cunts were just happy to be alive.
Yeah.
50 was like a fucking, if you're alive at 50, you're a fucking god. Know what I mean? But now it's like at 50, you're meant to have a house. That's a society created construct. I think these Amazonian tribes away in the jungles and shit that are still surviving now care about what you're doing at 50. They don't get houses at 50, but they're living their life, know what I mean?
It's mental. But yeah, no, what I'll something will come up. There's no two ways about it. You know what I mean? It would take a bit. Whatever it does, it's what it is. But yeah, it's been a blast the last couple of years, and I just know that there's going to be more over the next few years as it moves forward again. You know what I mean? I've got a feeling the criminal justice side of supporting mayor guys for prison and women for prison, and that seems to be the biggest draw now. Seems to be for me to go, which was never. I always try to stay away for know so much for it, but it seems to be pulling me in. But that's because it's a positive, because what we're doing is a positive.
Keep people out of jail.
You know.
So see, obviously, when you went in with Cisco into Ballina, so do you think you maybe get to a point where you engage, like maybe have a regular setup in Ballina, where you go in and deal with the prisoners, a pre-release kind of thing?
It's funny because there's a lot of organisations who seem to be doing that at the moment.
Passports, one of them.
There's a few. But so the way I talk about prison sometimes and stuff like that as well, that people. So it's that whole thing when you talk about being an ex-offender in employment. People say, well, you're working with prisons, and I touched on it earlier, and it's like, no, I don't need to go to prison to help ex-offenders, because there's that many that are out in the streets that have left over the years that struggle to get work, and it's and I also find that trying to get involved in getting into organisations like prisons and all that, it's all the big boys and girls that are dealing with them, you know what I mean, all the big organisations.
Corporations,
so
don't get much time for that.
And I've so they would treat me more of so you're going to do this on a voluntary basis, and they're all getting paid the big bucks and stuff like that, and I'm like, I'm not
that's it, because content that
if I'm not going to get paid for it, then it will be in my terms, you know what I mean, and I'll do what I want, and that's the community employability, because I'm just dealing with as many ex-offenders on that side that I can support and help in any way. So it's like we'll see where it goes. As long as I'm helping people into work, I don't care.
That's the main thing as well. As long as you're doing your passion, know what I mean? It's like you can do it for free.
You know, like tomorrow I've got like 5 people booked in to see me. I've got about another 4, 5, 6 already booked in for next week and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's just constant.
Aye.
It's constant. And as we get out of lockdown, more people are feeling more confident about thinking, right, let's get back to work, or you know, because a lot of people were thinking there weren't any jobs out there, but there's always jobs.
You would think that, and all maybe with the economy and that kind of thing, because I think see, obviously when the lockdown, whenever it fucking ends, is that you'll find that a lot of people find themselves out of work, know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'll probably find a lot more people come through your doors.
There's other opportunities and other avenues of whatever. But look, I've been involved in employability for 10 years now, and I always say there's always jobs. There's always jobs.
Just have to look at the right
it
place.
Might not be the one you want to know, but I'm not here to build a career for you. I'm just here to help you into work. But if we want to talk about careers, then you're always going to find the better job when you're in work. And sometimes it takes you that long to try and find that job. You're better just taking a job sometimes and earning money and applying for another job, because if you're working, an employer is going to take you on a lot quicker than somebody that's unemployed, because you're already working. And I sometimes hate talking like that to people, but sometimes you need to be practical as well about when you talk about employment and about stuff like that, you know.
I need to be realistic with them as well, you know what I mean, to a degree.
My guys that tell me they want to be a bus driver and they can't even fucking drive, you know what I mean? You know? It's just crazy. Yeah, but you get that sort of stuff all the time, and it's like, are you joking me, mate? It's like, well,
I think you'll just go, well, I've actually got a driving licence with your fucking name on it. There you go, mate, on you go.
Somebody came up the other day and said, look, my mate does a driving job up at the hospital. Could you get me that job? And I'm like, that's probably the single job in that hospital, and he's got it. But he loves it, so I want that. And it's like, mate, you're not going to get that job, right? But we can help you into something else. And so the amount of people that they come in thinking like that, it's like, no, mate, come on, we need to. If you're a driver, we can get you there's hundreds of driving jobs out there we can try and get you. There's no just piecemeal within, you know, your Yodos and your rest of it, you know. The bus drivers earn a fortune, actually. You know what I mean?
They're
You
in
know?
a fair bit. I think it's mad shifts. It's like split shifts. You can like chefs in it. You work maybe in the morning, then you'll be off, then you'll be back in at night and shit like that.
My sister-in-law, Danielle, she worked at Sainsbury's. You know, she's like nearly, I think she's in her 30s now, actually. She'd been there for like 12 years. She quit that and became a bus driver.
Well, did you?
Aye, just mental. She's earning more money, and I think the shifts work better around the kids, actually.
Aye, because it's like shift patterns in it, kind of stuff you work.
Does that. So she loved that, and she's earning decent money on it and stuff like that. But we've helped a few people into bus driving jobs by talking about it and stuff like that. But that's it. It's just about talking to people differently about employability as well, about jobs, and just that. But even like the mental health side, we were talking. I know the mental health side and stuff like that. But the barriers that help somebody getting into work, you know, and it's not why we do what we do, but you see we talk about the collateral side of the supports that you help people with and stuff like that. But people's mental, you know, the positive impact of people's mental health when they're working, when they're not working, we know that, you know. But people that suffer from mental health, and it's a big thing now, we notice. But the amount of people that come in and talk to you and say, look, I went through this or I went through that, and now I'm ready to get back to work, and it's like, great, it's brilliant, you know what I mean? That's phenomenal, you know what I mean? You know, thanks for telling me that, by the way. That's really, people, when you talk to something like that as well, it's like, what? It's like, yeah, it's great.
I'm not used to being spoken to
No,
that.
because you don't get that when you go and talk to the job centres or other people.
Fuck, man.
Some people get embarrassed, you know what I mean?
Aye, because you're opening up about your emotions, you know
like,
what I mean?
But the person you're talking to, they get embarrassed that somebody's opening up to them. You know what I mean? They don't know how to react. It's like when I talk to people about, I spoke to job centre people and go, do you talk to people about prison, or do you talk to them about their disclosure and about when their convictions? Oh no, Jesus, couldn't you talk to them about anything like that? And I'm like, well, wait a minute, you're supposed to help them into work. So do you know if their conviction's spent or not? Oh, I wouldn't know. And I'm like, well, you need to know that.
What the fuck you doing, mate?
You need to know that in order to find out whatever. I'm not asking you to speak to them about their conviction or time in prison or whatever. We're talking about work, jobs. So it's that whole thing is, and it's just like, you know, I wouldn't talk to somebody about, you know, well, what were you suffering with, what caused? You don't talk about that. But it's like, okay, you acknowledge what they're going through. And if they've managed to share that with you, you make sure you acknowledge that back to them, you know, because it's the same as somebody talks to you about prison or whatever. You acknowledge that, you know, and and that's the same with anything, you know, whether somebody that's a refugee or just get their status, they can't speak English enough, but they want to work, so you need to treat them a little differently and help them a bit more. Or if it's like, you know, we just supported a mother into work, she'd not worked for like 15 years, you know. My CV shit, I just got nothing on it, and then you sit there and then you build it, and it's like, this is brilliant. So you've done this since you've been that, so you were involved with the school, right, we're going to put that on it. You've been involved, done some charity work, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my god. And I went, well, how great's this CV?
I didn't realise until you've actually wrote it for
how
them.
brilliant is this? And they're like, I'd never thought about putting that there. I says, look, a CV is just capturing you, your life, in work, in what you do, what training you've done or whatever. And then all of a sudden, it's like you're talking about it as a positive, as opposed to they've walked in and went, I'm a bit embarrassed about this. And don't be embarrassed about your life. Don't be embarrassed that you've not worked for 10 years. Don't be embarrassed about whatever. Don't ever be embarrassed about that. Let's position it. Let's talk about it. Well, what if they ask me if there's a gap? And I always laugh and I say, tell them. You were looking after your Wayne for 10 years, you know? And it's like, well, employers don't like gaps. So I went, fuck them then. Right?
That's what you always you think to yourself when you get gaps. You're like, fuck, I'm going to make something up here.
And it's like, you know, you're not going to work for the Secret Service. You're trying to get a job at B&M's, you know what I mean? It's, come on, this is real life, you know what I mean? You know? So, well, obviously we don't tell people to talk to employers like that, but the reality is like, you've got to be, it's like, come on, because the perception about how you get work and how you do this and the negative, everything's negative. Everybody that walks through the door is negative. It's like this, and I'm sitting there bouncing. Right, come on, let's see this, let's do this, and I'm not like that all the time. But it's you need to turn that negative into the positive, and you need to make that person walk out that door that they want to come back in and see you, because when they go to the job centre, they don't want to go back to the job centre. They're dreading getting back to the job centre.
They're getting back to the fucking pits of hell, man.
Yeah. And I want them at me every day or every second day, or at least back into next week, you know. And then if they disappear, great, because then I'm thinking, I know they've got a job interview and I know they've got something. Then you phone them after a couple of weeks. Oh, I started work. Sorry, I never told you. Great, don't worry, it's brilliant. Or actually, I've had a bit of trouble with my boy or whatever. I've no time to bother. Tell you what, just give me a call next week, you know. And it's like, all right, okay, no bother. Or then you see them in Govan. What's happening to me? All right, I've started and stuff like that. So it's about treating, like you said, it's about treating people like people.
Yeah, that's what a lot of these places are missing, man. These big organisations.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's a switch and change, and I've seen it because I see it because I'm involved in employability. That whole like no one left behind campaign. It's a Scottish government thing, and I always say that's great, but you need to deliver what you're saying. You know, that's big words. No one left behind. That's big words. You know what I mean? You know. So, but I call people out on it. I mean, I called employability companies out the other month actually, and I do it all the time. And again, I don't make friends that way either. But what's the point of running your own company if you're going to just fall into line with everybody else?
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
Man. You're not doing what you said, but it says in the tin.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And it's like I said, if I wanted to go and make money, I'd be out there stealing again and making.
Exactly, you'd find easier ways to do it, you know what I mean?
Or I'd become a manager and do everything else what you're doing, you know.
Yeah, exactly. You'd find easier ways to do it, you know what I
so
mean?
you just, you know, and that's it. But it's I always say I'm privileged to the position where I've got in life now that I've managed to get to do what I'm doing.
The fact that you're pursuing one of your passions, that's what they say. Work at what you're passionate at, and you'll never work another day in your life.
100%.
As I say, it's quite evident. I mean, you're doing it for free and you're happy to do it for free, you know what I mean? That's like scaffolding. I chuck my job again. If somebody asked me to do that for free, I'd spit in them.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
I had that. I mean, that was like 3 years ago when I first started. Then I was like, I had no money, and it was like, but people said to me, why are you doing it for free? And it's like, well, wait a minute. If you start a business, you start a business potentially with no money, and you start to build it, and that's what I did. I took it on. You know, I did have that business sense at the beginning to go, look, I moved to Govan. I went to. The reason I done that was because I had a premises and I wanted to live and breathe it, and I wanted to be there 24/7. And you do that if it was your own business and you were opening a shop, you were doing whatever. I just wasn't selling goods, or I wasn't, doing that. I was giving away free services, and I just needed to go and find somebody that would pay me to do this kind of thought process and this idea about helping people into employment. I mean, so like the 200 odd folk that we have helped into work over 2 years, we've generated 2.5 million in wages. That's how much people have earned since we've started. So it was 1.6 million, and I think it's just under 1 million for this year that we've helped.
That's amazing.
So
man.
that's money that's money just for the people that have sustained in employability. So we've calculated it, and that's another part of the kind of success story, or the way that we're going to use our facts and figures as we move forward when we apply for funding, to show about the social generation and regeneration, about how it helps with regards to that outcomes as well, with regards to that as well. So it's and that was never something that I ever thought about. It was actually Ryan Davison for the Government Housing, when we were talking about the social impact and stuff. I was struggling with social impact. I couldn't get my head around. Well, social impact is I'm getting people into work. That should be good enough for you. It's like, no, you need to quantify it. You need to this, you need to that. And he had a wee programme that actually worked out the social impact. And one of them was just working out how much people earned from that 12 months. And because we track everybody as much as we can, we actually took it on the percentage of not everybody that was supported, but just the ones that we hit, they were still working. So we knew that figure was an accurate figure about what we do. So that's something that I can, as well as the job outcomes, is we can say, well, actually, this is how much money's been generated.
You can actually put a number to it, and it's quite high. So I mean, it's a real number, not. I mean, you can back it up.
Yep. You know, it's and that's another side of it where you go, fucking hell, man, that's mental. That's you know, that's mental when you start thinking about it on that side. Yeah.
That's amazing, man. So see people if it's want to get in touch with you and that kind of thing, how would they get in touch with you to, let's see, obviously people that are kind of want to get employed or that?
Easiest way is there's Facebook. So Unlock Employment is on Facebook.
Right. We'll put up a wee thing with a wee tag, see if we promote it, see during the podcast, and that, so people watching they can get in touch with you directly, that kind of thing.
That there, and Twitter, Unlock Employment. Twitter, just drop me a DM.
Just at Unlock Employment, the one word.
Unlock Employment comes up, but if you put Unlock Employment,
it'll pop up.
Comes straight up.
And plus, I know people could just, if you walk into the office and that kind of thing,
100% if you're in Govan.
Whereabouts in Govan is it?
Right next to the old Govan Arms, right across from Sunny Govan.
Right
Sunny
next
G,
to the
radio station, aye. So we're right next door to that. But yeah, social media is the big. I mean, during lockdown, my social media went mental, as in my DMs and stuff like that, just with people dropping stuff like that. You know what I mean? Which is great. I mean, I always try and get them in and come in and sit down and talk to me.
Nah, get and meet them face to face.
Even if it's just that, and then we try and support them digitally after that, or through whatever it is. You know what I mean? But pardon me. But yeah, that's it. Just get in touch. Through that way.
I'm sure you get a lot of people if they're watching this will get in touch with you, because as it goes back to a lot, see you're talking about like you've been in a prison yourself, a lot of people can relate to that.
I think I mean it's like we all, you know, don't get me wrong, we get lots of people that will come in and they'll just want to talk prison stories and everything. It's like, look, shut up.
Yeah, that's only a small part of it,
come
isn't it?
on, that's great. Come on, let's get you into this. But that's also an environment sometimes where people feel safe. And when we talk about prison stories, we're talking about, you know, having a laugh and joking, a bit of banter. That's fine, because it's all about that environment that you want to come in. You know, we've got a wee office in the back as well, where there's the other side of it, where literally people just need to talk. Like this is what I'm going through, but I need a job. I need a job. You know, but I need you to. So when I know when somebody's talking to me like that, then I need to respect them, because it takes them a lot in order for them. Because they may have told somebody else that, or told somebody, and they've just not had that support, you know. But like I said, the support that we offer isn't that whole, you know, it's not like dealing with addictions, or it's not dealing with whatever and mental health. It's just, I've got the easiest job in the world. You know what I mean? All we're doing is helping people into work. It's no like it's doing whatever, but I just don't get why other employability companies just don't have that same thought process. Just too many people treat it just like a normal job. You know what I mean?
It's just numbers at the end of the day.
But it's like you treat people like people, you get better outcomes.
That's what's missing a lot of these places, man.
And that's what I just find mental. That's what I just find mental. If you want to be successful, I mean, I always say that I started Unlock Employment. I need to prove concept. And proving concept is getting people into work. You know what I mean? I was shouting about my first job, my second job, my third job, and stuff like that, you know. And even John, one of the first guys that I helped into work, he's still working actually. He's working at the COVID centre over at the COVID injection centre.
SECC.
SEC, he's still working in there. We helped him into healthcare. Security, healthcare, and then he's working at the COVID centre.
Oh, brilliant, man.
So he's still working. But we went through my list there actually, because we were coming to the end of the 2-year contract that we just delivered. And the amount of people that we helped into work in the first 6 months that are still working, it's phenomenal.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, even you do look at stuff like that and it's like, Jesus, you know, some of them have got 2 or 3 jobs, but they're still working, you know. And there's a couple of people that we helped into work, and they've been in work straight away, you know.
That's amazing. Now you've got the numbers to fucking back up the results anyway. Plus or not,
I mean, the other side as well, I don't say that if we weren't there, they would never have got into work. They would have got into work, because that's what people want, but it would have probably took them longer to get into work. You know, that's the other side of what we do, you know. We don't wave a magic wand, we just help people with that 1 step, 2 step, you know.
It's missing the sort of got the personal aspect everywhere else is missing. It's a great thing you're doing, you know what I mean? But defos, it's like, I think the future definitely bright for you, know what I mean? Got a lot more coming. It's just as right now, it's just obviously a bit in limbo with your funding and that. But as you say, it's not going to stop you doing anything.
No, it's not going to stop anything. And it's like, you know, I scream and listen. I could sit here for another 2 hours just talking about employability, you know, and no even about unlock employment. I can actually just tell you about how bad everything else is and what they should be doing right. And because for me, society, and I hate getting into that mode of talking, but you see the because I live in Govan, and you see the positive side of it. I mean, I had a boy in last week. I mentioned him. He came in, he was pissed, and he just came in, he started cuddling me, and it was just like that whole thanking me for keeping him into work and stuff like that. And the positive side of everything that helps people. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that that's the way every employability company should be, isn't it? But just that whole thing about getting off fucking benefits. You know what I mean? Getting off benefits, paying your own rent, having a self-worth, and having a life. That's the other side that I don't go into so much now, but that's the other side of the whole poverty trap, the whole poverty narrative, and about why is it so difficult for people that live within poverty areas to get into work? Well, they don't have Wi-Fi, or they've got limited Wi-Fi, they've not got computers, they've not got this, they've not got that. But that's taking it down another angle a bit, but when you see that, you see it, you know what I mean? You see the positive sides of helping people into work. And that's when you take the personal side of it,
Yeah, that's what it comes back to.
And that's what it comes down to. When you get all the big companies, they're dealing with numbers. It's like just dealing with numbers all the time, and it's like, of course they'll get wins, of course they'll get people, of course they will support, whereas I'm like, slow it down and just sit them down, talk to them, and like support them,
That's it, it goes back to treating people like people, innit?
Treating people like people.
So make that your slogan.
I will, I've had a few in my time,
But I think we'll call it a wrap there, man. It was brilliant speaking to you, mate. Fucking thanks for coming. You should have your own podcast.
Listen, no. Listen, the thing is, look, I talk. I mean, actually, my stepdaughter actually she watched one of the other wee talks I gave to was the street cones or whatever, and she said to me, "Jesus, I'd never heard you talk like this before. Never knew like all of this and
it
stuff
comes to
like
the fire
that,
of the belly, man. That's the passion.
And it's like, look, this is what happens when you get older as well. When you get a passion in it,
That's
whatever.
it, man. It's beautiful. A lot of people don't find their passion in life at all, man.
And that's the other side of prison, is that I'm lucky to have found that afterwards, or I could have been in a mundane job, whatever, but it's no. I managed to find something that I love, and I'll never give it up.
A positive for a negative, man.
you know.
Amazing, it's inspirational. But it's been a pleasure talking to you, Jerry.
Thank you.
But as they say,
I appreciate it. Thank you for.
I know it's brilliant. We'd love to get you back on again, man. No, I mean, definitely in the future. But I think the future's right for you, man. Right for you anyway.
It is. I'll keep in touch and whatever. But the boys and the girls that I mentioned there, definitely get them on. Honestly.
Oh well, I'm going to take a wee note. Definitely. Especially the last of Cisco. I know I'd like to get her on. Paul McAlinden, James Docherty. I'd like to get if you could get in touch with them. If you speak to them, just say, there's a man with a studio. It's like to talk to them.
Yeah. I think James is a bit shy. He's not shy, but I think he's.
The time I've probably moved into my house in Govan, innit? This will probably be one of the last podcasts in here. So
all right.
I'll
so
probably be in Govan
the
next time. I'll be moving to my house. I'm putting it in my spare room.
Right, okay.
I've got a spare room, and it's in Govan, so it's going to just be, it's got to be chilled as fuck. Right here, it's cramped as fuck, as you can see.
No.
So I kind of like the idea of doing it in the house. I can do what I want. It's the one of the ones goes back to the ones at the end.
Brilliant.
And I like it. It's just getting up and down near the bars and that. There's a bit of a rush about, whereas I can sit in my slippers. I just want to do is I can sit in my fucking flip-flops. That's all it really is. My fucking dressing gown, set up a wee couch and all that. These fucking hate these chairs, man.
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I think it's brilliant. But listen, no, if you're doing it at home and all that, it's no.
Could start working for him, know what I mean?
How many have you done so far?
Many's that, Matt? What one's that?
Still wrong. I think that's 13, 14.
Right, 14. That's from number 13 or 14. That's premeditated batter. Catch you next time, troops.